Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3, The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook, live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios. Ian is here today. Hello, Ian.
What up, what up?
Did you conserve your energy this morning from 6 to 10 a.m.?
A little bit, yeah.
Did you
actually.
really?
Yeah. No laundry, no dishwasher. Yeah. Nothing too crazy.
Those things don't happen at my house, by the way, between 6 and 10 a.m.
Yeah, well, hey, man, you got to get the time when you can get the time.
Yeah, I did unplug the car, at that point in time. But, and I turned the AC off upstairs, I turned the heat off upstairs. But I've never seen that before. I've never seen, like, the president of the TVA being like, please conserve energy between 6 and 10 a.m. And I saw that on Twitter last night, and I wanted to make a smart-ass comment about Robbie and Joe. But nothing clever enough came to mind, so I didn't. But I digress. Let's start with Bussin' with the Boys. That's right. I listen to 2 episodes every year. I listen to Mike Vrabel on Bussin' with the Boys, and I listen to Derrick Henry every year on Bussin' with the Boys. Because Derrick Henry does the entire year where he does all these interviews, and he doesn't say anything. Then he goes on the Bussin' with the Boys, and he says everything. So it is a must-listen-to interview. Now, again, Taylor Lewan and Will Compton, they've done a good job for themselves. I'm not somebody who listens to that on a consistent basis. That's not really my flavor. I will say this, though. They have gotten a lot better. Like, in terms of how they have gotten, as somebody who listens to them like once every 8 months, they have gotten a lot better. Now, again, Lewan said this summer that he thinks he could do talk radio every day. And I'm sure he could do it. But, like, in terms of doing it well, I have my doubts. But they have gotten better. And it was a very fascinating interview. But there was one thing at the very, very top that stood out to me. And it probably should be the thing that stands out to everybody else, which is Derrick Henry and coming back here. And this is what Derrick Henry said about returning to the Titans on Bussin' with the Boys.
Yeah, I want to be somewhere that, whatever happens, that gives me the best shot of winning the Super Bowl. The business side is a business side. At the end of the day, it has to make sense. I'm just not going to, just accept anything at the same time because, it's a long season. We put our bodies through a lot. But at the same time, I definitely want to be on a roster that, can go out there and put ourselves in position and be able to win games and get in the playoffs and contend for a ring.
When you say stuff like that, it seems like the door to the Titans is closed. And that's not a bad thing if it is.
No, I'm not saying it like it's closed, but I just feel like I said earlier, I feel like they're going in a different direction. And I feel like today definitely solidified that. And that's okay. That happens. That's the nature of the business. If we want something to last for forever, nothing does, especially in this business.
So where Derrick Henry sits today, he thinks it's over. When he gave that speech after the game on Sunday against the Jags, that final Sunday, about thank you, everybody, I love you for forever, it reminded me of Jerry Rice coming off the field in his last game at Candlestick Park. The only difference is Jerry Rice literally said to the fans that day, I think it's time for me to go somewhere else. Derrick won't say that. But again, Lewan says, it sounds like you're closing the door on the Titans. Yeah. He doesn't think he's coming back. And I have tried to convince myself that the Titans need to bring Derrick Henry back. I have tried to explain it to other people why the Titans need to bring Derrick Henry back. I think there is a need for Derrick Henry. But after listening to that interview, he's not coming back. At least he doesn't think today that he is coming back. There was one point in the interview where he said, they were talking about the 2019 run, and he said, Lord, please let me experience something like that again. And as of right now, I don't think he thinks the Tennessee Titans are going to have a team that would allow themselves to compete at that level next season. So he's stopping just one step short of saying, yeah, it's over. Like, it's over. It was a great run. I love the Titans. The Titans love me. I love the fans. But just like Jerry Rice said, time for me to go. It does feel like that's what Derrick Henry is saying. Now, if I was running the Titans, I wouldn't have an opinion as to what's going to happen with Derrick Henry next year because I don't even know who the coach is going to be. I heard Caroline say in the last segment, I even texted her, I said, when she said on the air, she goes, I would be disappointed if the Titans don't make Derrick Henry an offer. And I'm like, we don't even know who the head coach is going to be. Like, we think they're going to run that McVay-Shanahan offense, but they may not. They may hire somebody and run the wing T. I don't know. So it's hard for me to tell you what the Titans should do, given the fact that we don't know who the coach is going to be. But again, in Derrick Henry's head, it's over. Now, here's the second part of this, because this is very important. And Derrick Henry did leave the door open, even when asked by LaJuan, like, are you closing the door on the Titans? And he kind of sidestepped it with well, they're going in a different direction. He didn't say yes, but he basically said yes. But where he left the door open was actually when he was talking about wanting to win a Super Bowl and talking about how, hey, we put our bodies through a lot right here, a.k.a. I'm not playing for free. Now, I wonder what the market is going to be for Derrick Henry, because Derrick Henry has a big name. But Derrick Henry's team hasn't won a lot lately. The mindset of the NFL, and I don't completely agree with this, but this is where the game is headed. The mindset of the NFL is that you cannot win led by a running back. In fact, not only can you not win led by a running back, but you can also go pick up Isaiah Pacheco in the 7th round. The Jets this year signed Dalvin Cook, again, another big name, at Aaron Rodgers' behest, and Breece Hall, who was already on the team, is a better player. And so where the league is headed, I'm actually fascinated by what the real market for Derrick Henry would be. And you know me, I'm not big into analytics and say, oh, this guy said this and that guy. But PK said to me, Paul Kaharski, a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about Derrick Henry, but PK said to me that Derrick Henry last year had 3 yards over expected. So, again, I'm not one of these analytic gurus. I'm not somebody who's like, oh, no, did you see what the next gen stats said? And I watch ball. I see what happens. I talk to some people who know better than I do, and then I just tell you what I think. I don't grade them like PFF. I don't do any of that. But let's just take Paul Kaharski's stat and say that it's true. 3 yards over expected. Can't you draft that in the 5th round? Now, I don't think you can draft Derrick Henry in the 5th round, but I'm not speaking for me. I'm speaking for the other teams around the league. So I don't know what Derrick Henry's agents have told him. I don't know what Derrick Henry thinks is out there. I don't know what other teams maybe have indicated to Derrick, even though that's tampering. But right now, in his head, he thinks he's not going to be here next year. It is impossible for me to know what the Titans think because, again, the Titans are preaching collaboration, and the head coach having a very large hand, won't have the final say probably, but a very large hand in the personnel operation. And so if that's the case, there's no way they could have their mind made up on this if they don't have a head coach. But in his head, he's gone. Now the question has to be, well, what is Derrick Henry willing to play for? What is Derrick Henry, if he wants to be on a team that wins a Super Bowl, is he willing to work at a reduced role? Because if he stays with the Titans, for instance, he'll still probably get a lot of carries, especially on 1st and 2nd down. That may not be the case everywhere else. Is he willing to play for $3 million? Again, he said, we put our bodies through a lot, a.k.a. I'm not playing for free. DeAndre Hopkins was not willing to do that when Kansas City was offering $3 million after he saw Odell Beckham get 15. Remember, we were told when DeAndre Hopkins hit the market that DeAndre wanted to play for a Super Bowl contender. DeAndre listed the 5 top quarterbacks that he would want to play with. But nobody called. And that was a receiver. Derek's a running back. So again, I have spent all this time, towards the end of last year, everything else. I value Derrick Henry because I believe that Derrick Henry is still a really good player and that the Titans just put the worst offensive line I've ever seen in front of them. And I don't care what the analytic gurus say about what Derrick was supposed to do or what he did do or what he didn't do or anything like that because, again, I know how bad that offensive line is. I knew it the 3rd day of training camp. I walked out and I called my dad and I said, this offensive line is horrible, and I would have liked to see Derrick run behind a good offensive line. But I still don't really know what the market would be for Derrick Henry. I really don't know who would want Derrick Henry. And I don't even know if Derrick Henry knows that yet. Derrick Henry will be a big TV name. If Derrick Henry hits the market and the Titans don't tag him, and considering that they'd have to pay him 120% of the tag because it would be a second tag, I'm going to assume that they're not going to do that. If Derrick Henry hits the market, I mean, you're going to see on television what team should sign Derrick Henry. The Ravens, the Cowboys, the Chiefs, the Bills, every big team, they're going to talk about it on TV. But again, are all these teams that are crunching all these numbers, are they going to want Derrick Henry? And I can't speak for them. I would just tell you, I would just look at it like this. If Derrick Henry were a free agent, a true free agent, I'm not sure there's any doubt that I would value him more than the other 31 teams. So what does that mean for his future? The Titans offer you 8. Somebody else offers you 4. Do you take the 4 at a better chance, or do you take the 8? Because, look, man, I'm Derrick Henry. I'm not going to play for $4 million. And those are the real questions here. Because, again, he didn't really leave the door open to returning to the Titans. He did leave the door open for, I am not going to go play for a contender for no money. Just like DeAndre. Kansas City and Buffalo were interested in DeAndre Hopkins. They wanted to pay him $3 million. How much better would the Chiefs be with DeAndre Hopkins? Much better. How much happier would DeAndre Hopkins have been in terms of competing for a title if he had gone to one of those 2 teams? But again, money talks now. So I don't think that the Bussin' with the Boys interview where Derrick Henry, again, makes it very clear in his own head that he's not coming back to the Titans. I don't think that that is as much the end of the story as much as this is the beginning of the story. And there are so many layers that are coming up next, right? Like there's who's going to be the coach of the Titans. After they decide who the coach is going to be, how much do they value Derrick Henry's leadership? What does the owner think? How important is Derrick Henry to her? What is the market going to bear for Derrick Henry? All of those things all come into play. So we're just starting this. 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in on that, 615-737-1025. Plus, there was one thing that was said by the boys on Bussin' with the Boys, Will Compton and Lawan, that I think everybody, including Derrick Henry, probably believes. And I'm not saying that they're wrong. I just think it is ignorant to believe that this is going to be fact. I'll explain what that is. And a lot of people believe this. We'll do that next. 615-737-1025. Stillman and Company, 1025, 106 the game.
staying with the Titans and getting those records and cementing what is already cemented, but just adding to the beautiful sculpture you've created of Nashville would be sick.
Yeah.
But if I'm you, would not want to be at the Titans.
I don't think the boys got the squad that's gonna. And I'm not like saying that disrespectfully.
Yeah.
This are ways away from like, you know, if people, because everybody, the whole Titans fan base is gonna root for Derek
No matter what.
no matter what. If anything, like even when the talks to him of getting traded, everyone was not against it. It was, if anything, it was like on board, and it's like, man, ship him to a team where he can go win a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
He's had that type of impact. That was like the same with KB. Everybody like, well, at least he gets to go, you know, to the Eagles. And it seems like they would at the time, like they're still in the playoffs, but hey, you get a shot to go chase the Super Bowl.
Everybody, by the way, did not say that. But that was bussing with the boys, and you heard right there them say, hey, I don't think the Titans are going to be good enough next year. And let me just add, I don't think they're going to be either. But I'm not going to just write it off, which I think is what a lot of people are doing. This idea that the Titans won't be able to compete next year. And I just think that that is flat out ignorant to how the NFL operates. Anybody think the Texans were going to be in the divisional round of the playoffs? Last year, Houston picked second. Indy picked fourth. Indy was a bad throw from Gardner Minshew and a drop pass by the running back from being the Texans. So, I mean, we're just all convinced that the Titans were bad this past year, so they're for sure going to be bad next year. Jacksonville had the number 1 pick in the draft 2 years ago and ended up in the divisional round of the playoffs. I heard Robbie today go back to the beginning of the year, and apparently the teams with the lowest win-loss projections were, amongst them, Houston, Tampa Bay, and L.A. And they're all in the final 8. The truth of the matter is, in this league, the difference, and I know the Titans cited this as some sort of excuse, but the difference in the league is a couple of plays in every game. The Ravens are the best team in the NFL. You played the Ravens in a neutral site game, and you lost by 8 points. And in that game, you dropped a punt that allowed them 3 points. You allowed a 70-yard punt return, which gave them 3 points. And Malik Willis, at the end of the game, first and goal from the 1-inch line, and instead of figuring out a way to put the ball in the end zone, he decided to run to the side and then jump back in bounds with the clock running. Those are 3 plays. 3 plays in a neutral site game against the best team in the NFL. So when I hear, again, that, yeah, I don't know if this team's going to be very good next year, I point you to the Texans. Number 1, we don't even know who the coach is going to be of the Titans. Number 2, what about the quarterback? Now, Taylor Lewan wasn't on the team this year. Will Compton wasn't on the team this year. Derrick Henry was. But a lot of how good this team's going to be over the next couple of years revolves around how good this quarterback is going to be over the next couple of years. Now, I'm not one that's going to sit there and tell you he's a franchise guy, because he's not a franchise guy yet. And there are 2 issues that he has. 1, too many boneheaded decisions. And 2, injuries that everybody just assumes will work themselves out. Everybody thinks, or at least everybody that wants to think this, thinks, well, you know, Levis will stop with the boneheaded decisions because Levis will grow in the NFL and he'll get a better understanding. And so that ball where he should wait for Treylon Burks to come open and throw it down the sideline against the Texans, instead throws it into double coverage for DeAndre Hopkins for a clear interception, that in the future Levis will be able to make that throw. But there's no guarantee that he'll be able to do that. And then the injuries. Well, Jared, the offensive line was just bad this year. Maybe. But he did get hurt at Kentucky. He did get hurt in training camp when you can't hit the quarterback. So I'm not completely 100% all in sold on Will Levis. But I haven't been around Will Levis. Derrick Henry has. I talked to Mark Stoops at SEC Media Days, and I asked him about Levis. And I said, you know, what do you make of all the people that think that his bad season was what led to him falling in the draft. And Stoops told me, looked me right in the eye and basically told me he took it personally. He's like, this kid, he doesn't care about money and fame, and he doesn't care about that. He cares about the winning and the work, and that's who he is. Liam Cohen told me that Will Levis is at his house 24/7. At least he was when he was in college. So if Derrick Henry sees that and thinks, oh, my God, this kid could be special. We get the right coach in here. This kid could take off. Well, then maybe that changes his mind a little bit about their ability to compete next year. Again, I don't think the Titans are going to be in the Super Bowl next year. But stranger things have happened. In fact, in almost all of the Titans' best years, except the 2000 season, most people weren't expecting much from the Titans. 2021, they were the 1 seed. Everybody thought Carson Wentz that year was going to Indianapolis to go turn that franchise around. People thought Matt Ryan was going to be the answer the next year. So again, they're not saying that Taylor Lewan and Will Compton aren't entitled to their opinion or whatever. I'm not saying they shouldn't say it in front of Derrick Henry or saying any of that. I'm just saying the idea that the Titans are for sure going to be bad next year is just not how this league operates. The other sports, baseball, basketball, hockey, yes. There are teams that are like, guys, we're going to suck this year. Like, we all knew that the Chicago Blackhawks were going to be bad. But that's not how the NFL works. I mean, the NFL, if I told you at the draft that the Houston Texans would be playing in the divisional round of the playoffs and the Philadelphia Eagles would not be, you would have called me crazy. But that's how this league works. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. 615-737-1025. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Chip in Mount Juliet says, Derrick Henry all wants and needs a ring. He's already cemented his legacy here. Why come back? Can I tell you why a lot of people do a lot of things? Money. Again, it's easy to say, if Derrick had his choice of 32 teams, it'd be easy to say, nah, not the Titans. But if Derrick has his choice of the Titans at $9 million and the other 31 teams at $2 million, now what do you do? And I don't know about you guys, $7 million is a lot of money. So that is important. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Derrick did drop a nugget in there about the trade deadline that I'm not sure he would know, but he might. And I was fascinated by what he said. We'll get to that coming up next, 615-737-1025. If you want to weigh in here on Stillman & Company, Stillman & Company is brought to you by Jarrett Companies Fire and Commercial Plumbing HVAC Division, JarrettCompaniesInc.com. Hey, tune in to 93.3 Classic Hits tomorrow for MTSU men's basketball. The Blue Raiders are taking on UTEP on the road, pregame at 7:30, tip-off at 8, and coverage is also available on the 93.3 Classic app and at 93.3ClassicHits.com. And tonight, Vandy takes on Auburn at home. Tip-off is at 8, pregame at 7:30. Coverage is also available on the 102.5 The Game app.
Did you think you were going to? Because you were obviously in a lot of speculation, I'll say. I don't know how many conversations were taking place.
Well, I feel like it was close. It was close. I feel like
You know something?
it was close. It was close, boys. It was close.
To who?
It was
in the playoffs?
Yeah. It was I know 2 for sure. It was. I mean, I don't know the other one. I don't know if that would have happened, but one of them, I felt like it was pretty close.
What makes you?
A lot went down between that little saga with the trade and all that stuff.
That was Derrick Henry again on Bussin' with the Boys saying, "Oh, it was close," which makes me laugh out loud at the idea of all the people that were like, "Oh no, they're not going to do that. They're not this. They're not that. That rumor is not true." There was a report out of Baltimore. We were trying to figure out if this guy was legit or not, that said that the Ravens and the Titans had a deal and that Amy shot it down. And we were told that, oh no, that's complete bullcrap. That's not true. And it probably isn't, but I'm just saying, like, this is what's driving me crazy about the Titans, is that everything we're told isn't going to happen and isn't true, we then later find out is in fact true. So on Bussin' with the Boys, Derrick Henry says 2 AFC teams wanted him at the deadline, which I think leads all of us to say, who are those AFC teams? Now, this thing was taped on the Tuesday that Vrabel was fired, and so he said it was a playoff team, but it could have been Cleveland, even though they're not still playing right now. My guess is the 2 teams that wanted him at the trade deadline, Baltimore, Kansas City. That's my guess. The way Derrick Henry talked about it when he was like, oh, it would have blown up, made me think, yeah, probably not Cleveland.
No Buffalo?
I don't think so. They're spending so much money on that team already.
Yeah, they went after Fournette, and added him to the practice squad. They cut him, but I don't know.
I mean, it could have been Buffalo. It could have been Cleveland.
Yeah.
It could have been Houston. It wasn't, but it could have been. But I think it was the Ravens and the Chiefs. And the team that I'm actually more sure of is I absolutely think it was the Chiefs. I absolutely think the Chiefs looked at their team, saw their problems at receiver, and said, we may need a guy like that to take the air out of the football. That if we get into a game like the game on Saturday where it's freezing cold, we could give it to Pacheco a bunch, but Pacheco is more of a, he's not the pounder that Derrick is. Whereas if we get Derrick Henry in here with our offensive line the way, we can pound it behind Donovan Smith, and we might be okay. Because, again, the interior of their line is not bad. It's the tackles, specifically the right tackle, that, is kind of an issue with Kansas City. But I'm going to say, I think Kansas City could, if the Titans had traded Derrick Henry to Kansas City, I guarantee you that would have blown up on TV like, oh my God, look at what the Chiefs just did. I'm going to put the Ravens in there because, again, I think they probably looked at him as like a Mark Ingram type. Now, for the most part, I'm not sure Derrick Henry would actually know any of this, right? If the Titans weren't interested in trading Derrick Henry, as they said they weren't, but again, with the Titans, we never know. If the Titans weren't interested in trading Derrick Henry, how would Derrick Henry have known? But I am going to say that I think he might have from this standpoint. His agents would have had to have been involved if the Titans would have had to rework his deal in order to trade him. So if the Titans would have had to bonus him the money that he's due so that they can ship him off for the league minimum to another team, and then another team gives the Titans, a better pick in return, then Derrick's agents would have been involved. Von Miller did that with the Broncos on his way to the Rams a couple years ago. Which takes me back to, I think, what is the true moral of this story, and this will be the moral of the story when it comes to Derrick Henry and free agency. Whatever it is about those 2 AFC teams, whether it's the Bills or the Browns or the Ravens or the Chiefs, whatever it may be, they obviously didn't want him that bad. Because if they were willing to offer a decent pick, the Titans would have traded him. If they were willing to offer a second or a third round pick, the Titans would have traded him. And as much as I didn't want to give up on the season then, because at 2-4, I saw a Titans team go to the AFC Championship game, I would have said, hey man, If they're offering you the Von Miller package, a second and a third rounder, you eat the salary, I'll drive him to Kansas City right now for a second and a third rounder. That's not the bag of footballs they got for Kevin Byard. Which takes me to this free agency that Derrick Henry is about to hit. If those two AFC teams midway through the season knew they were competitors and they weren't willing to pay for Derrick Henry, why would they be willing to pay for Derrick Henry in free agency? And that's just something he's got to keep in mind when, again, it's easy to say, I want to go win a Super Bowl, but I got to get my money now. It's easy to say that today. I'm not sure it'll be that easy on March 17th when he's out there and his agent's coming back to him saying, I got you for $2 million at this team. $2 million? Yeah. You know, the cap. They just don't know what they can. All right, what's Tennessee offering? 8? Okay. And I think that could be a possibility. Also, if Rand Carthon made a great trade of Kevin Byard, then do you get on him for not making the trade for Derrick Henry? Again, I don't get on him for not trading away Derrick Henry. I thought it was the right decision to not trade away Derrick Henry. I still think it's the right decision to re-sign Derrick Henry. But see, that's what a lot of people are doing here, where it's like, oh, that was such a great trade, for that 5th and 6th round pick. Oh, yeah, because you announced to the entire league and to your own team that you were giving up on the season? Okay. I mean, again, it's easy to say now we know how this season ended. But we don't know, if he had been here, what it would have been. There's no way to know that. 615-737-1025 here on the program, 615-737-1025. Jeff from Hendersonville says, Derrick Henry is not coming back. The new regime wants their guys. Maybe. But again, when it comes to Derrick Henry, it is not exactly about what Rand Carthon or what Bobby Slowick or Aaron Glenn or Brian Callahan or whoever the next head coach is, Bud Kilmer. It doesn't matter. I mean, it does matter what they think. But Derrick Henry is like a quarterback from the standpoint that the owner is going to be involved in this. Now, when you decide what you're going to do with Derrick Henry, it isn't a Rand and whoever the coach is go off to the combine, they come back, they're laying out their free agency plan and their draft, and they put these boards up and everything, and they're going through them with the owner, and the owner says, what about Derrick Henry? Oh, yeah, no, we're not interested in that. Sorry, that's not how you do that. The owner will be involved, and the owner is not new. Texter says, I listened to that whole podcast. I did too. Derrick Henry is not coming back here unless they pay him stupid money. He says that he doesn't think the Titans have a roster to win the big game, and he wants a ring. But again, DeAndre Hopkins wanted all these top 5 quarterbacks and wanted a chance to win, and then nobody offered him any money. So then he came here. Don't be shocked if Derrick Henry ends up in a similar spot. And I think there's one text in here that I think is actually pretty good, where one texter says Ezekiel Elliott might have a bigger name than Derrick Henry. And yet, he had to wait it out until the very end to be a goal line back for the New England Patriots. And I don't even know how much money Ezekiel Elliott made this year. I can't imagine that it's great. But that's what I'm saying. Like, if these teams aren't going to push their chips in for you at the trade deadline, because if a team like the Ravens or the Chiefs or somebody had pushed their chips in there for Derrick, the Titans would have done the deal. So if a team's not willing to do that at the trade deadline when they already know they're a contender, then why are they going to do that in free agency?
Zeke signed for 1 year, $3 million, 1.1 guaranteed at signing, $600,000 signing bonus.
Woo! I mean, that's what...
Some playing time incentives, per game active bonuses, stuff like that.
That might be what Derrick Henry's looking at when he hits the market. Do you want to win a ring for $3 million, or do you want to come back for 8? $5 million is a lot of money. Jared's up next here on our program. Thank you for waiting. What's up, Jared?
Hey, nothing much. How's it going, guys?
Good. Go ahead.
Hey, so yeah, I mean, I think, and we can talk numbers, and Zeke got this and Henry got that. I'm a season ticket holder, and I guess if I'm that front office, at some point, it's got to be a little bit about putting asses in the seats. Who you going to go see play on this team next year? And I think that's one of the big reasons why they need to try to get something done with Henry. I'd give him maybe 2 years, $5 million somewhere in there. But I think he's got gas left in the tank. But like I said, you're going to go see Simmons play. People go to see touchdowns scored. And
are you going to cancel your
the,
tickets if they don't re-sign Derrick Henry?
No, not at all. I'm just saying, from the front office perspective, you got to go see somebody who's on the team.
So I think, and I appreciate your call. I mean, I think that their hope is that will be the quarterback. That the quarterback will develop into the person that you go see. I think the putting tushes in the seats, I think that's more important with the head coach, right? Like, if you bring in Aaron Glenn, you are not going to put the butts in the seats that you will with Bobby Slowick, especially, like, for instance, if Bobby Slowick gets to playing Bobby Slowick ball, the way the Texans are on offense, you'll put a lot of butts in seats. But, I mean, at some point, Derrick Henry will not be on the Titans anymore. We all have to understand that that's just reality. Chris Sanders joins us next. His thoughts on that, his thoughts on the Titans coaching search, where we go from here. We'll do that next. 615-737-1025. Somebody just texted in Ian and said Zeke made $6 million.
Well, I don't know. I'm just reading off Spot Track here. It said, contract terms, 1 year, 3.
Okay. So then maybe he got incentivized something or another. But again, like, that's the deal Derek might be looking at. Tune into 94.9 The Fan tomorrow night for Vandy women's basketball. The Commodores are at home. By the way, they have been kicking straight tush, although they did lose on Sunday, which I didn't like. The Commodores will be at home taking on Auburn. Tip-off 6:30, pregame 6:15. Coverage also available on the 94.9 The Fan app and at 949thefan.com. Stillman and Company, there is an update to the Titans coaching search. According to Dan Graziano at ESPN, the Titans are bringing Brian Callahan next week in person for an interview, the offensive coordinator of the Bengals. So it was told to me today, the way this all works, right? So the Titans could not do a virtual interview with a coach that was playing on Wild Card Weekend. That's why they did their virtual interview with Mike McDonald, because he's the defensive coordinator of the Ravens and they were not playing on Wild Card Weekend. Now, they can do virtual interviews with Brian Johnson, Aaron Glenn, Bobby Slowick. Again, the guys that are playing, they can do virtual interviews, but those guys right now are working. So you'd have to probably squeeze it in after the preparation or anything else is done. And so it is incredibly fakakta how this is all going down. Chris Sanders joins us now in the program, but they are going to have a second interview for Brian Callahan. Chris Sanders, your thoughts so far on what you've seen, heard, and thought of the Titans coaching search?
It's kind of hard to put my fingerprint on it because, a lot of guys have been getting interviewed like Antonio Pierce and all those guys, but you just don't know what they're thinking. They don't know if you want an offensive-minded guy, a defensive-minded guy. You really basically just don't know. I just think that, once the playoffs are over and everything's kind of settled, I think that they can really put the thumbprint of who they want, the identity of their team and, the guy that fits the mold of what they're building. So we just got to kind of sit and wait. I know we kind of get excited when we see the feed, like, the Titans are meeting with this guy or meet with that guy. It's kind of fun and exciting, but at the end of the day, you just got to wait patiently to see who the Tennessee Titans are going to get.
Well, I don't know if it's that simple, but I do think that when it comes to the Titans coaching search, are there candidates that you like or don't like?
Yes. I really, there's two guys that I love. I love Bobby Slowick, from the offensive coordinator for the Texans. The reason why I love him is, I love the way he developed C.J. Stroud from the Texans. He's the fifth, all-time coming in to throw for 4,000 yards as a rookie. So he knows how to develop quarterbacks. He knows how to, teach quarterbacks to perform under pressure. And then you have a situation with Will Levis that's still, good at what he does, but still raw. And I think Bobby Slowick can really develop him into a quarterback that the Tennessee Titans need. And then the other guy that I really, really love is Antonio Pierce. The reason why I love Antonio Pierce is I don't really know about the X and O's, but I love how he motivated a Raiders team that was kind of dead in the water and, a situation with the coach and the other coach that was there before to where, nobody wanted to play for him. And then you had a situation to where he but he was there as the linebackers coach. You put him in the role of being the interim head coach, and he turns the season around. So if you bring him here, that's a great motivator, and he, hires the coaches beneath him that has the same, attitude and the same confidence and the same, to bring a team together. That's the reason why I love that guy.
Former Titans receiver Chris Sanders is with us. What are your thoughts on hiring a defensive coach?
This is what we got to understand, and listeners got to understand. When you hire any coach, offensive coordinator or offensive minded guy or defensive minded guy, at the end of the day, if he's the defensive minded guy, he's gonna hire an offensive coordinator to run to call the plays. And so a lot of times when you get a guy that's a defensive minded guy, he's not calling the plays. It's just that he's just he's just used to coaching the defense. It doesn't mean he's going to call the play. So I think we need to kind of maybe throw that statement out a little bit. I just think that whatever coach, they bring in, it fits the mold of what they want to do, and I just think that that's the most important.
So hold on, say that again for me. So you think that an offensive coach will call the plays, but a defensive coach won't call the plays?
No. Even though he might be an offensive-minded coach, he might not call the plays.
I want an offensive head coach that calls the plays.
But why? Why would you want a head coach to call the plays?
Because what's happened in the NFL, the way the game's trending, is that these gurus like Sean McVay and those guys.
Right. There's only a couple guys that do that, though.
It's a lot bigger now, right? Like there's Andy Reid, there's Mike McDaniel, there's Sean McVay, there's Kyle Shanahan, there's Matt LaFleur, and all these guys are in the playoffs. And I guess my point is that what we've seen with a lot of these quarterbacks is they do real well under a coordinator. The coordinator, like Arthur Smith, then goes and gets a head coaching job, and they have to replace the coordinator, and they don't do a very good job of that, and it hurts the quarterback. And I don't want to hurt the quarterback. I want to grow the quarterback. I want consistency for the quarterback, so I want an offensive coach with that quarterback.
Yeah, but see, you have an offensive coordinator who does it. I'll give you a perfect example. Look at the situation with Stillman there, okay? Stephen there was doing okay when he first got in, but he still need to understand the game. You have Jeff Fisher, that's a defensive-minded guy. He knows defenses in and out. But who did he bring? Who did he have in? Les Steckel. Les Steckel's offensive coordinator, and he helped develop Steve McNair. And I think that if you're a head coach and you start calling the plays, I just think that's another added responsibility that you really don't need. I'll give you a perfect example. Look at Bobby Bowden. This is what he said. He said, I'm the manager of the Florida State Seminoles, but I hired the best coaches so they can do their responsibility. If I'm a head coach, I'm going to hire the best offensive coordinator, the best defensive coordinator to make the team special. I just wouldn't add that extra responsibility when I got to run so many other things.
But that was football 30 years ago.
But it's still football.
I know, but what you're saying is you wouldn't want Sean McVay, and that's where the game's headed.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying it's different. Those guys are built for that. They've done that. They were offensive coordinators. So now when they're the head coach, they want that responsibility. But if I'm a head coach, I want to micromanage everybody and make sure that they're just doing their job. I'm going to hire the best offensive coordinator, the best quarterback coach to make sure they develop the guy that they want to be. And that's just my opinion. I'm not saying my opinion is right, but I just wouldn't want to add a responsibility when I got so many other things. I got the draft. I got to get free agent-wise, all these things. I'm getting the offensive coordinator that specifically does that. That's just my opinion.
The problem is, though, is that if you hit it out of the park with that, then the offensive coordinator gets a head coaching job, and now you have to go find another great offensive coordinator. And we've seen that that's a lot easier said than done.
I mean, I agree with you 100%, but at the end of the day, whatever whole head coach you bring in, what's your philosophy? What's your identity? What do we want to do? Do you want to give a guy more responsibilities? Do you want to take on the role of calling the play? So it's all up to the identity and the philosophy of what you're building. So if I'm a head coach, and I want full reign, I want to call the plays, I want to do all these things, then go get that guy. But if I'm a head coach and I got all these things I need to worry about, I'm going to get somebody in here that I know that has the same mindset. I'm going to get a guy that I know that has the same identity and my same DNA to impart into the rest of the coaches.
So it sounds to me like you wouldn't be interested in a head coach that calls the plays.
Nah, I just wouldn't, because it's so many things he's got to worry about. He's got to worry about, who's going to be in the game, who's not. I mean, all the things that are going on, that's just less thing you got to worry about, to where an offensive coordinator can strictly just call plays, strictly develop the quarterback, strictly, put in the philosophy for the rest of the team, so he can just focus on that as opposed to focusing so much on so many other things.
What do you make of Derrick Henry, Chris, going on, bussing with the boys and basically saying that he doesn't think he's coming back? He wants to play for a Super Bowl contender,
right,
but he also wants to get paid. I'm not sure that those two things may align. What do you make of it?
No, I think Derrick Henry's out of here. I don't even think it has to do with, because he said a quote like this: the Tennessee Titans are going to do what's best for the Tennessee Titans. And I think that if the Titans say we want you back, I just think he wants a fresh start. And one of the teams that in my opinion, that he might want to go to is Baltimore or the Bills, because they're smash mouth running your face.
But what if they're not going to pay him?
But I think, listen, bro, somebody's gonna pay this dude. I know everybody talks about the running back is not needed, but when you get into the game, we see what the Bills did with that league by running the game, running the ball. So we can say all these quotes all day long that they're not gonna pay him. Somebody's gonna pay this dude because he's still got some left in the tank.
I don't think they're gonna pay him.
Well, okay.
I don't think there's going to be a big market for Derrick Henry. In terms of
I'm
money.
not saying a big, but even though it might not be a big market, all you need is one team. And,
I mean, nobody was going to pay DeAndre Hopkins.
That's a totally different position, bro.
Right, that's a position people value today. People don't value the running back.
Okay. Tell me, why did the Bills win the last game? Because of what?
Look at how much do the Bills pay James Cook?
No. Answer my question. How many catches did Diggs have in the game against last week?
I don't even know. I know Josh Allen had like a 30-yard touchdown scramble.
He had one catch. And guess who was leading in rushing, opposed from Josh Allen, the running back.
Right, but the problem with that, they're never going to pay James Cook a boatload of money. They're never going to pay him. What they'll do is they'll go get the next guy. James Cook is probably on a rookie contract, and so they'll just go get another running back.
Okay, but that might be so. But just like what you said 2 weeks ago, just a little off the subject. You was like, he asked me, was Mike Vrabel going to be here, and I said absolutely not. He was like, oh, I don't know. But then you have a situation where you said nobody's going to pay Derrick Henry. They're going to say, okay, we got some great wide receivers on the outside. We bring Derrick Henry in with Cook. Who in the world's going to stop them?
I understand that, but if that was the case, then why wasn't a team interested in trading for Derrick Henry? Or why wasn't a team – Derrick Henry said 2 teams were interested and it was close. Why wasn't a team so interested that they made the Titans an offer that they had to take?
I mean, that's a great question, Jared. I don't know what those teams were thinking. Maybe they thought that they had their roster set. I don't know who they thought can be the guy, but now you're coming into an off season. You're on an off season. Now you get to evaluate. Okay, listen, if the Bills lose the game, all of a sudden it loses the game next week against, I think they're playing the Texans or whoever they're playing.
Chiefs.
They lose this game. Yeah, the Chiefs. I'm sorry, you're right. The Chiefs. They come into the off season and say, you know what? We got to figure out a way to make this team better. You bring Derrick Henry in and pay him whatever. You just made your team absolutely better immediately. Not down the road. Immediately, because look, you got some receivers on the outside, you got a quarterback that's nasty, you got a 2-headed monster with Cook and Derrick Henry. That is a dangerous team. So
Chris, I love you, but I feel like this
–
entire interview I've been talking to somebody who's living in 1992.
But guess what? 1992, they was winning games too, right?
Yeah,
Exactly.
They don't play the game the same way now.
Jared, what the Sam E. Hill are you talking about?
Well, I mean, think about the trade the Herschel Walker trade and all those players that became picks. Like nobody's doing that for a running back today.
Watch this. Check this out. Mark my word. When the Bills play the Chiefs this week, the reason why the Chiefs are probably going to lose is because of their running game. Watch. They're going to bottom Pacheco up, and what do you have now? Nothing. But if you have a Derrick Henry that takes account of him being on the field, it's going to make a difference. Watch the Bills blow the Chiefs out.
Chris Sanders.
Because of their running game.
Living in 1996. As always on the program. Chris, great stuff.
Hey, appreciate you, brother. Love you, man. Bye-bye.
Yep, Chris Sanders on the program. Text line's mad. We'll pick this up. Plus, this isn't like a report or a rumor, but there is a projection that has pissed a lot of people off when it comes to the Titans' next coach. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook, live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios. So, last night, by the way, the text line is furious with Chris Sanders right now. I mean, I love Chris Sanders with all of my heart. I do. I love him like a brother. But he doesn't want a head coach that calls the plays. And he doesn't, and he thinks there's going to be a huge free agent market for Derrick Henry. And I'm like, dude, this is not 1997. This is 2024. All the rage is the offensive guru that calls the plays. So I last night watched the whole Derrick Henry Bussin' with the Boys interview. And I figured, you know what, that'll be a nice change, to talk about that and maybe not as much about Bobby Slowick or whatever. And then this morning I woke up, and I don't know if it was like this in the streets, but Twitter was a freaking buzz about Dan Graziano at ESPN putting out an article in which he projected all the head coach openings and making Aaron Glenn, the defensive coordinator of the Lions, the next head coach of the Titans. And it was like across every show, everywhere on Twitter, was just like, Aaron Glenn. So let me just say this. One, that is not the first person that I have heard say Aaron Glenn. Now, the other person that I heard say Aaron Glenn is a buddy of mine who, when he said to me this weekend Aaron Glenn was going to be the next coach of the Titans, I truly didn't know if he was just firing one off or if he knew something. And he's the kind of guy who every now and then knows something. Not often does he know something, but he is very much in tune to the gossip circle. And so he said Aaron Glenn. And I texted him. I said, if they hire a defensive coach, I am going to go nuts. And he said, be ready to go Planters. Now, again, this is not somebody who is like a source it's just somebody who knows stuff occasionally. I want to stress that. So let's get back to Dan Graziano projecting Aaron Glenn. And again, this was not sourced information from Graziano. This was just him firing it out there. Hell no. I am not interested in Aaron Glenn. Number one, no defensive coaches. I'm sorry. Aaron Glenn, Mike McDonald, Antonio Pierce, whoever. I don't want a defensive coach. You may be able to talk me into Pete Carroll if there's like some big plan where Pete is transitioning it for the next guy. But other than that, no. No defensive coaches. Not happening. Not interested. I've got a young quarterback right now. That's the only thing good about my team. I mean, other than that, what? The punter? And he's got a broken leg. I got a young quarterback. That's it. I don't even know if this young quarterback's going to be great. But the only way that I'm going to be good anytime soon in the near future is to do what it takes to make this young quarterback great. I'm going to give him a defensive coach? No. Number two, Aaron Glenn's defenses with the Lions aren't even that good. Like, I know that the NFLPA player poll came out and said that he's one of the most liked assistant coaches in the NFL. That's great. But if I wanted a former player on the defensive side of the ball that the players liked, I would have just kept the last guy. Which takes me to the third thing, which is Aaron Glenn. It's like he's a great leader of men. I just fired that. I just fired the former player whose defenses really weren't even that good, who the players loved, and who was a great leader of men. I just fired that. Why would I hire somebody else to do the exact same thing? Because Aaron Glenn might be a little bit better with analytics than Vrabel? Is that it? Like, that's crazy. No disrespect to Aaron Glenn. And I'm not getting worked up at the Titans because I don't think the Titans are going to hire Aaron Glenn. But I just want everybody to know, on the front end, as we get into this, no defensive coaches. That's not where the game is anymore. I used to really believe, to my core, that the leader of men coach was more important than the offensive guru. I did. I remember when the Rams hired a 30-year-old Sean McVay. And I thought, what the hell are they doing hiring this guy? And Kevin Dimoff, who is the CEO of the Rams, he came out and said, when I close my eyes, I just hear John Gruden. And I thought, well, then why don't you just hire John Gruden? Right? It's not that complicated. But no, that worked. I remember when Matt LaFleur was the offensive coordinator of the Titans. I thought he didn't have a clue. In fact, I think the report was Vrabel only wanted LaFleur back the following year if he could demote him to quarterbacks coach. Didn't even want him to be OC anymore, reportedly. Look, Matt LaFleur does a lot of dumb in-game stuff, but he has brought that young quarterback along. Looked pretty good on Sunday. That's where the game's headed. I didn't think that 6 years ago. I didn't think that 4 years ago. And then I watched what happened to Ryan Tannehill when Arthur Smith left. And then I saw the success that the Rams have had, the success that the Chiefs have had, the success that the 49ers have had. Then the limited success, not as much as those teams, but the limited success that I have seen from the Packers and the Dolphins and the Bengals. And I'm like, you know what? Skippy Magoo with the tight pants. That's what you got to have. Farm out the other side of the ball. Go bring in some veteran defensive coach. I don't care who. Bring him in. Bring in Leslie Frazier. He's running the defense, and you're running the offense. And that's where the game's headed. And so if the Titans hire Aaron Glenn, they're not doing any of that. And I think that that's crazy talk. The idea that they would bring in Aaron Glenn. Like, I'm just going to tell you right now, if I was running this search, and I know that the Titans, first of all, they're involved in that Brian Flores lawsuit and the Ray Horton, claims or whatever. And the Titans have to make this look like they really are taking the Rooney Rule seriously, even if they're not. The Raiders, for instance, interviewed Leslie Frazier and Chris Richard, both guys that don't have jobs in the NFL, because they could interview them just so that they can give the job to Antonio Pierce, which is fine. That's their business. But if I was doing this, we wouldn't even be interviewing defensive coaches. Rand Carthon walk into my office with a list of these guys he wants to interview, and I'd be like, that's right. You go ahead on the Zoom call for Dan Quinn. I'll be over here. No. So when I saw the Aaron Glenn thing, I'm sorry. 1, no defensive coaches. 2, his defenses aren't even that good. 3, he's apparently a great leader of men. I just fired that guy. I'm not hiring him back. 615-737-1025. A lot of you want to weigh in. 615-737-1025. And I do have to say this. I have never once believed that an owner has to do what the fans want. There may be a little difference here, though. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
if you make that offensive guru the head coach, then when other teams come and cherry pick and poach players off or coaches off of your staff, poach is not the right word because it's not, that's a negative connotation. But when they come in and hire coaches off of your staff, your offense remains the same. I mean, we look at the young guys that are out there. Kyle Shanahan with San Francisco, Sean McVay, Super Bowl winning young quarterback or coach with the Rams. Then you look at the older guys in Andy Reid, for example, with the Chiefs. As coordinators have come and gone, the offensive system stays the same. As defensive coordinators come and go, defensive coordinator is important. But at the same time, it's easier to break things than it is to build things. And for a quarterback to be successful, he needs to build at the highest level in the finest detail. Defenses, you can come in with a simplified scheme, and if you've got the players, you can just be a wrecking ball and have some success while you're learning the nuances.
See, that's what's great. Trevor's sitting there saying, hey, defense, nah, you got the players, you just bring the coach in, whatever. It's like when I say that I want the offensive guru as the head coach, that doesn't mean that we're not going to have defensive coaches. They're just not as important. And that's where the game is. And so I feel okay ruling out these defensive coaches, specifically Aaron Glenn, because that's who Dan Graziano mentioned. But Aaron Glenn, Antonio Pierce, Dan Quinn, Mike McDonald, rule them out for me. Because the past ideas that I've had about coaches, I don't have now. The guru coach is where the game is headed. Now, I don't know what Amy thinks. I don't know what Rand Carthon thinks. And Aaron Glenn might be the next head coach of the Titans. I have no idea. But let me say this. If they do that, it better work. Because if it doesn't, that may be the end of the road between the fans and the owner. I mean, right now, I think the Titans are skeptical. When it comes to, I'm talking about Titans fans, I think the fans are skeptical about ownership. When they hired John Robinson, fans loved the owner. When they fired Mike Mularkey and they hired Mike Vrabel, fans loved the owner. When they were winning, they loved her. They thought she was great. I loved her. I thought she was great. When they fired John Robinson, the fans loved her. But lately, it's been a lot of, what? Huh? And while I do think there were a lot of people like me that were in favor of firing Mike Vrabel, I still think the way everything's gone down, the fact that she didn't take questions after she fired Robinson, the fact that they put out that North Korean video, her and Mike Keith talking, on the couch about firing Mike Vrabel. They put Rand Carthon out there to give a press conference that led to more questions than answers. I think all of that happened. And I think Titans fans are skeptical when it comes to ownership right now. And ownership is building a new stadium in which PSLs and tickets matter. And if they hire Aaron Glenn and it doesn't work out, if they hire Dan Quinn and it doesn't work out, because every Titan fan wants an offensive coach, including me, who used to, again, poo-poo the idea of you have to go with an offensive coach. Not anymore. That's where the game's headed. But if they go with an offensive coach and it doesn't work, let's say Ben Johnson is secretly a moron, right? Like, look, I thought Arthur Smith was going to work with the Falcons. I'm shocked it didn't. But let's say they hire that guy and it doesn't work. Fans will hate it because the team won't be good, but they're not going to turn their back on the owner and say, hey, screw you. If they hire a defensive coach and it doesn't work, I think that very much could happen. Very much. And so I've never been one to sit there and tell an owner or an athletic director or a general manager, hey, you have to take somebody that the fans want you to pick. I have never, ever felt that way. But in this case, it's a little different. If you want to go defensive coach, that's your prerogative. You own the team. But if you go defensive coach when everybody is clamoring for an offensive coach because everybody thinks that's where the game is headed, and because if you wanted a defensive coach, you could have just stayed with Mike Vrabel, it better work. Like, you better be consistently in the playoffs. You better be the Buffalo Bills with Sean McDermott, who's a defensive coach, where you're there every year. And even then, I think that there's going to be some distrust with having a defensive coach. And again, I'm not the one trying to sell PSLs. And not only that, the other part of the equation, too, is just how popular Mike Vrabel is. Or at least was. It's like, if the new coach is great, everybody will forget about Vrabel. If the new coach is bad, everybody will say, why did you fire? It was Mike Vrabel. And you got to be careful about that. Her father fired Bum Phillips. And I'm not sure the city of Houston truly ever forgave Bud Adams for firing Bum Phillips. And again, I'm for firing Vrabel. I think Vrabel, again, I think he may win somewhere else. I think he's got some positive qualities. I think that it had been enough. But the fans will, they'll go crazy. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in. Jack says if it's Slowick or Brian Callahan, I think the Titans will be in good shape. Look at what Shane Steichen was able to do with Gardner Minshew. And then he goes on to say something about Jim Irsay. By the way, that Jim Irsay story is wild. I'm surprised it didn't get out until now. Unbelievable. Matt asks, are teams restricted in how much they can pay offensive coordinators and defensive coordinators? No, they are not. Texter says, Steven from Hendersonville says, this is my worst nightmare manifesting itself. I feel like the Titans are stuck in Groundhog's Day. Leader of men mantra is a load of crap. McVay, he writes, is a leader of men. Shanahan is a leader of men. They're also the foundation of the offense. Give me that motivational speaker any day of the week is what the Titans want. I mean, look, I don't know what kind of leader of men Kyle Shanahan is. I have no idea. But that's not where the game's headed. Like, Matt LaFleur is where the game is headed. Guy's kind of a dope. Doesn't handle the defensive side of the ball. D coordinator. Fans always want him to fire. Doesn't do special teams. He just coaches offense. And he makes total mistakes. I mean, Matt LaFleur, what was it? They were down by like 8 in the NFC title game a couple of years ago, and Matt LaFleur elected to kick a field goal from like the 6-yard line. I mean, like, he's a dope. But he can run the offense and develop the quarterback, and that's what you have to have in 2024. And that's just where the game's headed. Texter says, Bum Phillips was popular with Texans. He was a Texans Texan. In the end, he was not a great coach. That's Mike Vrabel. Mike Vrabel's a man's man. Mike Vrabel is not an elite coach. An elite coach can manage his own staff. Vrabel can't. Arthur Smith left, and it fell apart. That is a humongous problem I have with Mike Vrabel. That and the fact that he hired the offensive line coach with no experience, and that was a disaster. And I tried to tell him about the special teams coach, and that became a disaster. But again, people like him. And the owner will not be forgiven if this does not work out. If it doesn't work out and she does something that the fans absolutely hate, which would be hiring a defensive coach. One texter actually says, and I do think this is good, didn't Floyd always say, if you start listening to the fans, pretty soon you'll be sitting with them? I think there are a lot of stupid fans. There are also some really informed ones, too, who are not wrong. I mean, I think Floyd would understand where the game's headed right now, and I don't want to speak for him. But the game is headed with the offensive coaches now. That's it. The gurus. I want a guru. 615-737-1025 is the phone number, 615-737-1025. I want to take a Titans breather. There was some massive news that came out today about how people may be watching the Predators, the Braves, the Grizzlies, all of it with Bally Sports. I want to touch on this next because this could be humongous news. We'll get to that. Stillman and Company. Let's talk about Window Nation. That's right. It's freezing cold. And so a lot of you, like me, you've cranked up the heat. Well, if you crank up the heat and it's still cold in your house, you probably have those cool air drafts. And that means you need to get your windows replaced. WindowNation.com. Put your hand on that glass. It's going to be, what is there, another winter weather advisory coming into effect tomorrow? Put your hand on that glass. If it is ice cold, you've got a problem. If you are cranking up your heat and for some reason it just can't heat that room, you've got a problem. Window Nation, let them replace those windows. And it is easier and more affordable than you think. No interest for 5 years and 50% off all window styles. Do not wait. Simply call 866-90NATION or visit WindowNationAgain.com. That's WindowNation.com. And again, see what it's like with the cool air. And if the cool air is just popping into your house, that is time to fix your windows. And when you do that, you'll save on energy costs. You will make your home more aesthetically pleasing. And most importantly, you'll add value to your home. And you'll like your windows. Again, that's no interest for 5 years, 50% off all window styles. 866-90NATION, WindowNation.com.
This is not Amazon deciding they're going to, throw up a Thursday night football game a couple times a year. This is like them fully becoming an ESPN competitor, I think.
Well, Brian, it could be a very big deal, but remember, this is in bankruptcy court, and bankruptcy court is a very unpredictable forum. It's very different than most court proceedings. It's kind of like the Wild West. So we'll see. Diamond Sports was facing liquidation after next year. It was widely assumed that Diamond Sports and all these regional sports contracts for these 40 teams would go away. And obviously, a partnership with Amazon would potentially preserve that business. All those 40 local teams are highly dependent on the revenue that comes from these local regional sports contracts. This is all about what cord cutting has done to the cable bundle, and the regional sports channels being the most expensive part of the cable bundle has really put these channels in jeopardy. And the question is, what is regional sports going to look like in the streaming era?
There you go. That was CNBC founder, which, man, I mean, that's some serious stuff there. CNBC founder Tom Rogers. So apparently Amazon is offering to buy a stake in what's called Diamond Sports Group, which is Bally Sports, into Bally Sports. Now, let me just say this. I know how much of you care about the Titans coaching search. I do not know how much of you care about this, but I think a lot of you do. So cord cutting has absolutely just smoked the NBA, MLB, and NHL. Just smoked them. Now, right now, they're okay because it's Bally Sports that's the one that's taking it on the chin, not so much the actual leagues and teams themselves, though there has been a little bit. The Padres had an issue last year with Bally Sports, and I think the Diamondbacks had an issue last year and didn't get their money and everything else. And so let's just call it what it is. Years ago, everybody had all the games all the time. We just had cable, and cable had the games. Then all of a sudden, we stopped having cable. And we had cable alternatives. And those had the games. Then all of a sudden, one by one, we started losing the games. Can you buy a streaming service that is reasonably priced in order to watch your team play? No. There is not a streaming service in Nashville, Tennessee that you can buy legally to watch the Atlanta Braves play baseball. You either have cable or you don't. Or one of these, Fubo that's got Bally Sports. And so what's happened is they kind of realized, I don't want to call it a scheme, but it kind of was, right? My grandmother lives in Florida, right outside of Palm Beach. I did the math in my head because the most expensive channels on cable are the regional sports networks, because the regional sports networks have the games and that's what pays the teams. And so I did in my head the math over the last 25 years, how much money my grandmother, who has never watched a Marlins, Heat, or Florida Panthers game, how much money she has probably paid to those three teams. Probably somewhere in the vicinity of $5,000. And she has never watched a game. And so the cable companies eventually caught on to this, right? And they said, well, you know what? People don't want to pay all that money for cable. They want to pay less. And so we're going to do this, and you've got to take less in order to make this work. And Bally Sports was like, whoa. We just bought these for $1 gazillion from Disney so that we could, put the games out there. So you got to pay up. And so they just said no. And people like me and you were the ones that get screwed because I want to watch game. So what happened today was apparently Amazon is trying to buy a stake of Bally Sports, what's known as Diamond Sports Group. And that what could happen in the future is that the games could be shown on Amazon Prime. Now, my guess is, I have Amazon, Ian, you have Amazon, a lot of people have Amazon. My guess is is that it's not just do you have Amazon like it is for Thursday Night Football. Do you have Amazon? You get the game. My guess would be it's going to be, do you have Amazon? Do you want to pay an extra $12 a month? Here's the Preds. That's what I guess it would be. I don't know. I don't know if this is going to work or not. Like, I don't know if I would be interested in that. Right now, it's like pulling teeth to get the Atlanta Braves on a consistent basis. And it's so expensive. You know, this Bally Sports Plus, it's $29 a month to watch the Predators. $29 for a streaming service? Are you freaking kidding me? And so I don't know if this is going to be something where, okay, you know, we're going to put the games. First of all, the bankruptcy court has to okay this. And then the teams and the leagues, they have to kind of okay it as well. Apparently, Major League Baseball was asked, hey, would you be interested if Amazon? No. Because Major League Baseball wants all their rights so that they can just make everything digital at one time. But I don't know if, like, paying extra for Amazon to watch the game, I don't know if that's going to work. And I'm not saying I don't know as in I wouldn't do it, because I just don't know. Ian, would you pay $12 extra a month on Amazon to watch Predators?
Well, I mean, probably, yeah.
I mean, I would too, but I just don't know that many people would do it.
Would it only be the Preds?
See, I don't know. Would it
Or
be a
is that-
channel that gives me the Preds and the Braves and everything else? I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what they're going to do.
Would you be able to get the Grizzlies games, all that kind of stuff too?
Agreed. But even then, and then if I'm getting all of those, then I have to pay more, don't I? Oh, no, that'll be $40 a month. Ooh,
Most
I don't
likely.
know.
Yeah.
And so here's the problem that, you know, I was talking to somebody today. So the Predators are going to be on Bally for the rest of this year. So this season, they'll be on Bally Sports, whatever it takes to get it.
Minus an
Fubo,
ESPN Plus game here or there.
Yeah, like, again, the weirdo, you know, ESPN Plus
Which is
games
on
like
Thursday,
tomorrow.
actually. Yeah.
So, you know, the weirdo games there. And then after that, like, the rest of the season will be Bally. Then after that, I don't know what they're going to do. What I was told was that the most important thing to the Predators is that the fans can watch their games. That is the most important thing. So it's like, well, if you stick with this and Amazon pays you X, Y, Z, it's like, okay, how many people can watch that game? Because they want people, shocking, they want people to watch the games. They want people to be able to watch the games. And again, with a lot of this stuff, convenience is a factor. And it should be. The other night, I've got one app that's got the Predators on. I've got another app that's got the football game, Peacock. And I'm like, do you know how much of a pain in the ass it is to go from watching the hockey game goes to commercial. Okay, let's talk into the remote. All right, tune to Peacock. So now it takes a second to open Peacock, and now I got a little circle thing on my TV, and then I got to click Peacock, and then it's got another little circle thing for a second, and now I got the football game. Well, now by the time all that's over, hockey's probably back from commercial. And that's where this is headed. And it drives me crazy. It drives me insane. I don't know how you guys feel about all this, but it truly drives me nuts.
Wish we could almost just go back to cable.
The way it was.
Put them
When
all
my
on cable.
grandparents were paying all that money for teams they didn't watch.
That's the problem, though, with cable right now is and how expensive it is. You pay for it, but you don't get all the games anymore.
No.
You used to be able to pay for cable, and you wouldn't have to worry about missing a game. Or you pay for it, you get all the games. That's just not the case.
And here's the other problem, too. Like, let's use hockey as an example. None of their playoff games, I know the first rounds are shown on regional television, but none of their playoffs are exclusive to regional TV. So all this money that it would cost for Bally Sports, it's like, great, but if they make the playoffs, I got TNT. Like, I don't need to. And I think there's probably a lot of people that are like, well, you know, the big ones I'll be able to get. I don't need, you know, to pay $29 a month to be able to stream that. Wait till it's on TNT. And I think this is, like hockey will actually, I think, be in the best space for this because the NHL is driven by the gate. The finances are driven by people buying tickets and going to the games. The NBA is driven by its national TV contracts. Baseball is not. Baseball is the one that may get screwed over this. And the last time this happened to baseball, where they were making a gazillion dollars, and then the people paying the gazillion dollars were like, that's too much money, was when CBS pulled out of their agreement to carry baseball in the early 90s, and that's what led to the strike. So I don't know what's going to happen with all this. It is massively fascinating to me. This is all the Department of Justice fault for making Disney divest the regional sports networks when they bought it from Fox. But I just got to tell you, again, I don't know how many of you care about this. The text line is on fire. But if Amazon's buying a stake in this, can you just put the games on Amazon? The way that I can watch Thursday Night Football, where it's just click, click, and I don't have to pay anything more. And I know the answer to that is no. But again, like I said, I was told that the Predators' biggest thing here for the future, the rest of this year's on Bally, but for the future is they want to make this so that the most people can watch the games. That they may even prioritize that over the bottom line buck is just making sure that people are able to watch the games, which I think is incredibly important. We'll take phones on it because a lot of you want to weigh in. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Stillman and Company, 1025-1063 The Game.
So they'll allow Bally to have one more year to operate. And then MLB will take over all 11 teams, bring them on board with the Padre package and whomever else they get to create the full streaming service that Major League Baseball wants to operate from. There was a last-minute bid that was really weird. It came from Amazon, those guys.
Those guys. Okay.
Amazon at the last minute offered Major League Baseball, let us loan Diamond Sports, Bally Sports $150 million, and then we'll negotiate with the teams going forward. And baseball said, no, we're not letting you come in at a low price and give you the right to steal all these franchises in 2025.
That was Lee Hacksaw Hamilton. Don't ask me who the hell that was. I found him on YouTube talking about the Bally Sports thing, and I found that to be very fascinating information. That Amazon came in $150 million and is like, we'd like to buy basically all the Bally Sports rights. And Major League Baseball said, no.
Sounds like an Amazon business move there.
Oh, yeah. And Major League Baseball, they've been trying like hell to get their streaming rights. Like, they want to own them so that they can then get around all the blackouts and everything else so that anybody who wants to watch can just stream the games. That's what they want. But you have to pay for that, which would also piss me off. But that's what they're trying to do. They're basically trying to cut out the middleman. And I get it. A lot of people want to weigh in on this. Again, Amazon is trying to buy a stake in Bally Sports that would save Bally Sports. To me, I got YouTube TV. When I first got YouTube TV, it had what was then Fox Sports Tennessee and Fox Sports Southeast and whatever. I got the Braves, I got the Preds. I'd like it to go back to that. That's what I'd like. And I understand that I'm just an old man that's yelling at a cloud, it feels like, but that I would like it to go back to that. And for the Predators, maybe it could. I don't know. Again, as I've been told, this year they're going to be on Bally for the rest of the year, and then they will evaluate. And this Amazon could be a part of it, could not be. But I was told that, again, the Predators' biggest concern is to make sure that the most people can watch the games. Texter into the text. This one texter says, if it was the Predators and the Grizzlies for $12 a month, I would do it, and you can watch one on TV and the other on a mobile device. I want to use my mobile device for what I don't want to do that. I want to be able to use my phone the way I want to use my phone. I don't want to wait 45 minutes for the freaking Fire Stick to switch over from one app to the next. And let me tell you what just freaking pisses me off. When I get asked to resume a game from my last watch. You want to resume from your last watch? No! I want to freaking see what's going on right now. And it just drives me crazy. One texter into the text line said they have YouTube TV, and that it said, I love the Predators, but the fact that I can't watch them through YouTube TV means I can't watch them. It's super annoying to keep up with my team by reading a newspaper. I feel like I'm living like Chris Sanders in 1992. Boy, 1992, it was a simpler time. Mike says he tried to subscribe to Bally last month. The app didn't work. He called them, and they said they couldn't do anything about it. That sounds like par for the course with how Bally Sports has gone since they rebranded it. Let me tell you my biggest problems here with Bally Sports. Number one, it is impossible to get unless you pay for cable or you pay extra. So if you cut the cord and you get Fubo TV or you get DirecTV Stream or whatever it is that has it, you have to pay extra per month in order to be able to watch these teams. And that's frustrating. I mean, the reason why I cut the cord was because when I moved into my home, I had a bunch of TVs, and it was like I had to pay extra for each box, and then I had to pay extra for HD, and then I had to pay extra for DVR. And Porth said to me, he was like, yeah, dude, just get YouTube TV. It's great. I was like, you sure? He's like, yeah. Okay. Never had a problem with it. Other than the fact that it doesn't have the Braves, it doesn't have the Preds. Texture says, what's different about ESPN Plus? I have that, and I seem to get every Preds game. You cannot do that if you live in the area. So if you live in the local market, you can't get ESPN Plus and then just stream the games. If you live in, Dubuque.
You can watch any other Preds or hockey game, NHL game, just not the Preds.
Yeah, well,
Yep.
Like, that's how I feel about baseball, right?
I mean, I like that feature about ESPN Plus. I'm not going to lie. For me, who I work on the network sometimes and keep up with the stuff, I'll watch any game. I was watching Arizona Calgary last night, ESPN Plus, no problem. Toronto Edmonton, ESPN Plus, no problem. I love that.
Yeah.
But you can't get the Preds games.
I got to tell you, I really, truly watch almost no hockey outside of the Predators. And I watch almost no baseball outside of the Braves.
And I kind of like that. I mean, with the MLS package, in a way, I kind of like how that's set up. You can watch any team, your team, any game, and it's all one flat fee, no blackouts.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that, and I think that's what baseball's trying to get to. I don't necessarily have a problem with that. What I don't like, though, is I don't like, games not being on TV.
Right.
And maybe that's where we're headed, is that this stuff's not going to be on TV. Vegas has a great deal. I don't know if they make any money off of it, but they took one of those, Scarbini channels, like the WB or whatever. They took that and they made it like Vegas 34. And it has every Golden Knights game for free. So like the same channel that used to run Dawson's Creek has the Vegas Golden Knights games, I think. And I even looked at like what is on that channel during the day. And it's like the Goldbergs and Judge Mathis and Scripps News Today, Vegas Golden Knights. That'd be perfect for me. Put it on YouTube TV. I ain't got to watch anything else. Now, if they were to do something like that, I probably wouldn't get the Braves, which would be a problem. But, Texture says, the thing I hate the most about streaming a game is there is a delay when you stream. I get fantasy football updates sent to my phone before the play comes on TV. I see a little bit of that, though, even like with cable, where like Jim Wyatt will be at the Titans game and the other team will be lining up to kick a field goal. And Jim will tweet out, Cairo Santos, good from 36, and the Bears had 3 more. And it's like, oh, I bet this kick's going to go through the up. Oh, there it is. So, I mean, I think that's kind of period, but streaming is definitely way worse for that. Although Amazon was actually kind of decent. Adam in Portland's up next quickly here on the program. Thank you for calling. What's up, Adam?
Yeah, dude. Hey, so I just wish they were consistent. Because, like, my best friend, man, like, I'm having to hit him up, and he hits me up every day. It's the same conversation. Do you know if the Preds are playing? Where are they playing? Like, and you have to jump through swapping out, logins. I mean, it's always shady. I mean, I'm not teaching anybody anything with that. Who's got the login for this or that? I just wish it was either – because it was Fox Sports South or Southeast is what they were doing, and that was what it was. And then they switch over to Bally, and it feels like they only have half the games. And then ESPN Plus never works when I go to log into that. So I don't know, dude. I hate it because I love the Preds and I would love to catch them all, but I catch probably half the games now.
I think that's how a lot of people feel. And again, to your point about ESPN Plus, and you're like, that never works. It's because they black out the games. But like for every fan to know every freaking rule about, no. Yeah, I took one step in the wrong direction. I can't watch the St. Louis Cardinals. It's like, freaking stop. That's all I ask. 615-737-1025. Here is our phone number, 615-737-1025. So leave it to our buddy, Joe Rexroad, to vouch for the stupidest candidate on the Titans list. We'll get to that coming up next here on Stillman and Company, and I cannot wait to get to that. Twice daily. Hey, buy any made-to-order Italian sub, and you could be going to Italy. That's right. Use your rewards app to get entered to win a trip to Italy. Every sub is a chance to win, not just the Italian subs, but every sub. But mobile-ordered Italian subs count as 2 times the entry. Visit twicedaily.com/sweepstakes for more information. Twice Daily is great. Download the Twice Daily app today and join their loyalty program to unlock special discounts, savings, and so much more. It pays to be a member with Twice Daily, where you'll earn points and save money with every visit. And apparently tomorrow we've got another winter weather advisory. So if you're out, maybe stop by Twice Daily and stock up on some things in case you get stuck at home. Get what you crave at Twice Daily, made to order sandwiches, bakery, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You name it, fresh items made to go. Of course, they got the hot stuff, the cold stuff, and the beer cave so that you can unwind with a cold one. If you're looking for convenience, Twice Daily has you covered. Twice Daily, fresh all day. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios. So, this morning, was able to get up and at 'em, get around. It was very nice. I was driving very slowly, but very carefully. And I'm listening to Robbie and Rexroad like I always do. And leave it to Joe Rexroad to pump the stupidest candidate for Titans head coach. So this was this morning. This came out, I want to say, was it yesterday, Ian, or maybe it was Monday, that the Titans were planning to interview Thomas Brown, the offensive coordinator of the Panthers.
Mm-hmm.
I saw that, and I'm like, hey, wide net. Go ahead, interview everybody, but let's not take it seriously. Joe this morning on why we should take the Panthers offensive coordinator seriously.
The candidate is Thomas Brown. Now, this was a league source. I had a conversation yesterday with someone who's very familiar with him, and a lot of things I didn't know. One of the big things is, so Thomas Brown, if it were to work out, and of course Thomas Brown, OC for the Panthers this year, everybody's like, oh my God, they suck. What? Stop it. I want Ben Johnson. I get it, but hear me out on Thomas Brown, okay? The NFLPA does this thing where they anonymously survey everybody in the league, and they do it to talk about their coordinators, among other things. But they, like, who do you like playing for? A lot of questions about them and whatever, right? Top 5 offensive coordinators that is in terms of liking to play for. And again, it's also like competence and all these things. It's not just like, yay, great guy. Sure. Number 1, Frank Smith of the Dolphins. Number 2, Thomas Brown of the Panthers.
Who should we hire? Well, the players like Thomas Brown. Is his team any good? No. How'd they rank offensively? 32nd in the league. But my league source told me he's actually a good coach. I'm sorry, but we have to have standards around here. There's something about coaching hiring. There's no way to know if a coaching hire is going to work or not, right? Like, how many people thought Scott Frost, a Nebraska alum, was going to go from UCF, where he had turned them into a legitimate powerhouse, and go to Nebraska and fail miserably? I was not one of them. I figured that Scott Frost was going to be fantastic. So we never really know. Nobody thought Josh Heupel would be the guy. Again, wasn't doing as hot at UCF as Scott Frost was. Nobody thought he'd be the guy to beat Alabama. But there's also standards when it comes to coaching searches, right? There may be somebody that we know that's a great coach, that's getting their foot in the door, that's Division III, Johnny Joseph University, and they might be the next Nick Saban. But you can't hire him to the Titans as head coach in the National Football League. And that's what Thomas Brown is. Thomas Brown's the offensive coordinator of the Carolina Panthers, of the 32nd ranked offense in the NFL. No thank you. Joe then continued to make excuses for why we should consider the 32nd coordinator in the NFL.
A big thing to keep in mind with Thomas Brown. First of all, so what I've been told is, like, he is the combination of, he's this whiz kid offensive guy. Also, he is the leader of men personified. That's, now the person I talked to may have been a little biased, but his offense is the offense we've talked about. His offense is the offense that I think ideally the Titans would switch back to. That's not the offense he called this year. The offense he called this year was Frank Reich's offense. And if anybody's paid any attention to what happened with the Panthers this year, it was an absolute bleep show of epic proportions, including David Tepper saying, let's smash all these ideas together and have so Thomas Brown's not even calling his offense. He's calling Reich's offense. And then Reich was a play caller, and then he had Thomas do it for a while. It was a disaster.
Okay, so there's all the excuses, right? Hey, he wasn't running his offense. He was part of that crazy staff in Carolina. Frank Reich's a doofus anyways. David Tepper's a micromanager. So we can't blame Thomas Brown. I'm sorry. But again, in the NFL, you are what your record says you are, which is why I'm not interested in Brian Johnson, the offensive coordinator of the Philadelphia Eagles, because Brian Johnson took a humming offense and turned it into crap. So I'm not interested. Just like I'm not interested in Matt Patricia to be my head coach, who took a humming defense and turned it into crap. Sorry, but again, we have to have some standards around here. And not only that, but Thomas Moore is a running backs and a tight ends coach. He's not even a quarterbacks coach. Like, if I want somebody off the guru tree, I want somebody who is the quarterback coach, because the most important position is quarterback. So if he were to go somewhere else and be a quarterback coach, or if he were to be a coordinator and have a lot of success, that's one thing. But I am not interested. Here was it this year as the coordinator. Points, 31st. Yards, 32nd. First downs, 27th. Passing, 30th. 32nd. Passing touchdowns, 30th. They were good at not turning the ball over.
You don't blame Frank Reich for any of that?
I blame him for a lot of it, and I don't want to hire him either.
No.
It's not like, oh, it's one guy's fault. So I'm supposed to say, you know what? Forget about everything that Thomas Brown put on the resume last year. Forget about that. It doesn't matter. Joe says he's a good coach, so hire him.
Well, Frank Reich contaminated it.
No. I mean, sorry, but just, again, we have to have some standards around here. They were 32nd in yards per, 32nd in yards per attempt passing, 23rd in yards per attempt rushing. Their average drives were actually not that bad, but they were 29th in the league in yards. I mean, it's just no. We're not, no. No. We're not hiring somebody because, well, I know he didn't do well, but you got to give him a pass on that. No. We're going to hire the guy, if I'm in charge, we're going to hire the guy that did well somewhere, that we then hope, because they did well somewhere else, that they can do well here. And is it too much to ask of that? Like, why is Kalen DeBoer the head coach at Alabama? Because the guy freaking wins everywhere. But guess what? When he was the head coach of NAIA Sioux Falls, and they were winning just like he was winning at Washington, Alabama wouldn't be interested. You got to get to a spot to where you've earned the right for that big-time job. Thomas Brown might be a great guy. He might be a great coach. He might be a great leader of men. All of his problems might be David Tepper's and Frank Reich's. But he hasn't done anything that says Titans head coach. And I believe in having some standards. And so make whatever excuse you want. Oh, it wasn't this guy's fault. Oh, it wasn't that guy's fault. That's how you end up getting up there and saying that, well, we just didn't win because the ball didn't bounce our way. I'm sorry, that's not how this works. Give me somebody who's got some results. Not this non-tangible idea that they can be a good coach. And if you are somebody that actually is entertaining the idea of hiring this guy to be head coach, you're off your rocker. I might take a defensive coach over taking the 32nd offensive coordinator in the NFL. And for everybody out there, again, trying to excuse this as David Tepper's mess or trying to make this about Frank Reich and not about Thomas Brown, let me just say this. He's the one who signed up for that job. It wasn't like he was drafted to be the offensive coordinator of the Panthers. He signed up for it. So no. You want to interview him? That's fine. If I owned the team, I probably wouldn't be a part of the Zoom. I'd probably be busy that day. Ran, you got it. Let's line him up and Dan Quinn up at the same time. Ran, all yours, baby. Of course, Joe wants to pick the worst candidate. Of course. Jared versus Joe, by the way, at the top of next hour. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. 615-737-1025. We'll get into that. Stillman and Company, 1025, 106 through the game.
I don't think there's any question that they do miss Shane Steichen. And you can talk about it being the same offense. They're running the same plays. All that sounds great, but there is an art to calling plays in this league. And you've heard me say it a lot, Joe. I think the hardest job on a coaching staff is offensive coordinator. They're hard to find. And they had one in Shane Steichen, and we've seen what he was able to do this year in Indianapolis. And Brian Johnson, I like him. He's a fine young coach, but I think the losses of the coordinators has impacted this team.
There you go. Troy Aikman just told you. If you've got a guru, it's the hardest position to find. If you got a guru, keep the guru. Because you lose the guru, hey, I think that this guy is a fine young coach. But, I mean, he's not Shane Steichen. Look at how bad Jalen Hurts is playing today. That's what he's telling you. So, again, I go back to today. The Titans, apparently, it was reported this week that the Titans are going to interview Thomas Brown, the offensive coordinator of the 32nd ranked Panthers, and that they're going to interview him for the head coaching job. And, again, I see all these names. Like, I don't get too caught up in this, right? Because, like, I don't think they're going to hire Dan Quinn. I don't think they're going to hire Brian Johnson, who they're going to interview. I don't think they're going to hire Antonio Pierce. I don't think they're going to hire Mike McDonald. Like, I don't think they're going to hire these guys that I don't want them to hire. They're just interviewing them to cast a wide net. But then, Joe, this morning, this guy, I was told by a league source who might be biased that this guy is actually a good coach, even though he was terrible as offensive coordinator of the Panthers. And it's not his fault he was terrible as offensive coordinator of the Panthers. And you might be right. But guess what? It's not Bryce Young's fault that the Panthers are terrible either. But he's going to get blamed for it. That's how the NFL works. And so, again, I'm not interested in taking the offensive coordinator from the Panthers. Come on now. 615-737-1025. Our phone line is driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. Brandon says, I agree with you, but the Titans hired Mike Vrabel on the whole leader of men narrative, and his defense sucked. And his defense sucked his 1 year as defensive coordinator. Right. And I just fired Mike Vrabel, didn't I? So I want to go do the same thing I did last time? Does that make any sense? Not only that, the game is in a different place than where it was 6 years ago. Because 6 years ago, the Titans were hiring the Patriot way. People thought the Patriot way still existed. Today, they are having a press conference in Foxborough where Gerard Mayo, the new coach, was basically like, yeah, we're going to have to do things completely different now. The Patriot way is dead. When they hired Mike Vrabel, the Patriot way was thriving. McDaniels was set to take the Colts job, which he then walked away from. Matt Patricia was going to take the Lions job. Everybody wanted the Patriot way back then. Now nobody wants the Patriot way. So the circumstances are different, and I still don't want to do the same thing that I did last time because, quite frankly, Vrabel, good leader. I'm not sure he was a great defensive coach. Look at 2020 and this year. Mark in Ashland City's mad. Come on, Jared. Respond to the whole segment and all the info. That is such trash. I'm not saying give him the job, but Robbie and Joe had actual stats and info. Basically, he was the offensive coordinator at Miami, the college, like 2016, something like that, to 2019 or whatever. And he was the assistant head coach on the Rams, which Mark puts in there. He was the assistant head coach of the Rams Super Bowl team. I guess you could say he did well there. Right. But he wasn't the offensive coordinator. Kevin O'Connell was the offensive coordinator. And Kevin O'Connell's the head coach. That's why. Kevin O'Connell earned the opportunity to be a head coach by being offensive coordinator. Now, he didn't call the plays, which is my only knock on Brian Callahan. He doesn't call the plays. And I know O'Connell didn't call the plays. He's done okay in Minnesota. Zach Taylor didn't call the plays. He's done well in Cincinnati. But, I mean, as Troy said, there's an art to calling plays. So I would feel safer with the guy who does call the plays and calls them well. But I don't care about any other position on the offensive side of the ball. Offensive line, running back, receiver, tight end. I don't care about any of it. The only coaches I want, offensive coordinators with quarterback backgrounds, because the only thing the Titans have going for them right now is a young quarterback that needs to be developed. So if I'm going to bring in a tight ends coach and say, all right, you're going to develop the young quarterback, what the hell are we doing? And you can make the argument, well, Zach Taylor was at one point a tight ends coach, and right, and then he went to quarterbacks coach. That's why. Texter into the text line says, why would coaches want to be in an environment that the GM has no power and the owner seems to be absent, yet makes every decision out of a snap reaction? Good coaches probably avoid the Titans. That's from Ben in Cumberland City. Here's why, Ben. Because there's 32 of these, and they pay about $8 to $10 million each. So if you had to deal with, look, there's people everybody works with that they don't necessarily love. There are circumstances probably at every job that somebody wishes, I wish we could do this instead. I wish this guy could be my boss, not this guy. I wish I could this, that. Guess what? I'll do it for $8 to $10 million. Plus, I do think Amy is going to empower the general manager. I do think she's going to, put Rand, quote unquote, in charge. And then we all have to pray that I'm wrong about Rand. Robert in Spring Hill says, so Jared, with all the names that are flowing out there, on who are your top three based on what you know about the candidates? Ian, can you help Robert in Spring Hill out? Who's your top candidate, Jared?
Oh, Bobby Slowick.
Bobby Slowick. That's, to me, I don't want to say it starts and ends with Bobby Slowick because I believe in insurance. But for me, this starts and hopefully ends with Bobby Slowick. To me, the Slowick thing is too simple. Slowick is the next guru guy, right? The tree is Shanahan and McVay. And so you go to that guy and you're his offensive coordinator or his quarterback's coach or whatever second in command is, and then you go out on your own. You leave the nest, and he has left the nest. He was Shanahan's right-hand man last year. He left the nest, went to Houston with the Miko Ryans, and they have lit it up. That's the progression. He's the next guy. And not only that, I think him coming here makes you better for your young quarterback, and it certainly makes their young quarterback worse. Which, while I'm not hoping C.J. Stroud fails, it would be nice if the Titans don't have to look up to C.J. Stroud like he's Peyton Manning in the division. So to me, it's a no-brainer. It is a no-brainer. Not even close. Zach in Nashville is telling me that Sean McVay, Mike McDaniel, and Bobby Slowick were never quarterback coaches. Guess what? They're offensive coordinators of good teams. You're trying to tell me that I have to take the offensive coordinator of a bad team, and I'm not doing that. I don't know what McVay was when it came to Washington, or where he was in Washington as the OC, right?
I believe that is correct.
When he was 29 years old, and I'm sure they sucked. But look, McVay is a wild card. He's a prodigy. You cannot tell me that Thomas Brown is a prodigy. But McDaniel was offensive coordinator. He was the next guy. Slowick wasn't technically offensive coordinator, but he was whatever passing game coordinator or whatever the hell it's called. And then he went to the Texans where he was offensive coordinator, called the plays. He's the next guy. That's how it works. That's how it works. You go from being the guy, you're the second in command behind the guru, and then you leave the nest and you have success, and then you become a head coach. You're not the quarterback's coach. You're not the offensive coordinator under the guru. You leave, you go somewhere else, you fail miserably, and you become the head coach. That's not how this works. Fitz will join us next, 615-737-1025. His thoughts on two things. One, the Titans coaching search, but also what's going to happen with all these other dominoes in the coaching search that may affect the Titans. We'll get to that with Fitz, and we'll do it next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 for the game. Stillman and Company, Jason Fitz joins us, Yahoo Sports and Fox Sports Radio. So, Fitz, right now, we got all these openings that are out there, all these different teams, who wants to go where, who wants. You hung up on him, Ian. Come on now. Ian accidentally hung up on him. But my first question is going to be about the fact that there's all these openings, right? But we don't even know about the Cowboys and the Eagles. And those two are pretty important. Because, again, I like Bobby Slowick. And I'm not sure Bobby Slowick will get hired in this coaching cycle. But I am worried that if the Cowboys and the Eagles come open, then that'll push some Ben Johnsons up the list. and then Bobby Slowick will get taken from me. Jason Fitz joins us now on the program. Fitz, let's start here. The Titans' job, it is what it is. But what do we know about the Cowboys and the Eagles and how that will affect the entire job market?
So I literally just got finished taping our Yahoo show inside coverage with a couple of our NFL insiders, and the Eagles and Cowboys, a big part of the conversation. The more I keep talking to people, the more I get a sense that the Cowboys' job is not going to come open. I know everybody thinks that it's just a done deal, but I think you have to look at a couple of things. One, look at the patience that Jerry has shown in the past, even with Jason Garrett, held on to him forever when everybody thought he was gone every year. And then Dak's comments, they weren't the first. My insiders here weren't the first to tell me that Dak's comments at the podium afterwards of, if you're going to get rid of one, got to get rid of me too, because we're tied together. I mean, Jerry felt that. Here's that has meaning. So I think that the Cowboys' job is not going to come open this year. I think they're going to run it back again. The Eagles' job is much different to me and pretty eye-opening. Jory Epstein, one of our NFL experts at Yahoo, one of our reporters, she was in the locker room after the Philly game, and she was pretty adamant in our taping today that inside the locker room, as she looked for players to defend Sirianni and looked for players to really stand up, they didn't want to. So they're very different situations. I'm less comfortable today than I was 2 or 3 days ago with the Eagles' job. I think it is. There's a better than good half chance that it comes open. I just don't think the Cowboys are coming open.
Is the Eagles' job a good job?
No, I don't think. Look, I mean, one thing that has been stressed to me by everybody, this is interesting. If you ask people in the league, not fans, but if you ask people in the league what makes a good job, the answer is stability and ownership is number one. Like, you got to have a relationship with the owner. You got to have a relationship with the GM. Those are important things, more important than cap, more important than quarterback, more important than roster, all of those things. So if I'm looking at the Eagles, what I see is a front office. Howie Roseman gets some credit for, his relationship with players, fine. But this is a front office and an ownership group that's not afraid to come into coaches all the time and tell them, nope, I don't like your coordinators, get rid of them. Nope, we want to do it this way from now on. So if I'm a coach, much like we talked about Frank Reich and his experience in Carolina, how is the Eagles that much different? You're going to have meddling from everybody above you. And remember, when things are going wrong on the field for a coach, it's the GM that's sitting there up in the owner's suite talking to the owner about everything the coach is doing wrong. So I hear more and more organizationally it's about ownership and GM more than anything else. And if that's the case, no, I don't think the Eagles is a great job.
Fitz is with us. Fitz, I want Bobby Slowick on the Titans. And I wonder what the competition for Bobby Slowick will be. Because I think the Chargers are going to go with Harbaugh. I think the Falcons are going to go with Belichick. I think the Raiders are going to go with Antonio Pierce. You're saying Dallas stays put. I think Washington's going to try to spend all the money to get Ben Johnson, but then Adam Peters did work with Slowick in San Francisco. What are you hearing? What's kind of the chatter around Bobby Slowick's name right now and what he's done with C.J. Stroud?
So, yeah, by the way, everything you're saying about his work with C.J. Stroud and who he is as a coordinator, there's a reason he's on the list. I think what helps you, if that's the coach you want this year, is looking around the landscape and mentioning some of the names you just mentioned. Like, what makes this hiring cycle different is that there are established names that have won a lot of football games that are out there looking. So that does make everything different. Like, I'm with you that Belichick to the Falcons makes some sense. I also think that Harbaugh to the Falcons could end up making sense. If he doesn't end up in L.A. with the Chargers, I think Atlanta becomes a viable place for him as well. I also think there's still a chance he lands in Michigan, but stays in Michigan. But if he comes to the NFL, those are big jobs that are going to be taken by experienced coaches, and that helps you in your attempt to get Slowick this year. So I think that actually the marriage makes a lot of sense. I think there is some element for him. He's going to have to decide if that's the gig he wants, right? And so let's go back to the things we just talked about, like ownership and stability, GM and stability, what's his relationships like in the building. I think those are going to be huge parts of it. And then he's going to ask himself, does he believe in Will Levis? Like, I think that's the third most important part of this conversation. So this is one of those weird moments where I think a good coach, a very good coach, is probably going to end up in a job that they would usually be hired for a better job, if that makes sense. But because of the Belichick and Harbaugh situation, there's this trickle down. Good jobs will go, great coaches will get in mediocre jobs. And I think right now the Titans, frankly, not trying to be harsh, is sort of on the landscape, kind of a mediocre job.
So when it comes to Slowick, how much of C.J. Stroud's success does Slowick get? And how much of that do they take away from Slowick because everybody thinks C.J. Stroud's so good?
Well, C.J. Stroud is very good, but here's the thing that Slowick has done that's, I think, beautiful. And, I've told you this over the years of our friendship. I believe coaching is a little like Chopped, the TV show. You open up the basket and ask yourself what you're cooking with, right? So one of the things that's interesting to me is organizationally, after they drafted C.J. Stroud, they sat down with C.J. Stroud, the Texans being they, and said, hey, who do you like as these receivers? Like, who have you worked with in this offseason that you really like? And C.J. Stroud was one that to them that said, Tank Dell, we got to get Tank Dell. You look at some of those moments organizationally, they did good things with their quarterback. But what I love about Slowick is, frankly, he stepped back and said, how do I make the best out of this offense with this quarterback? I don't think it's just the quarterback. I think play calling matters a lot to this, right? And so what you've got is a situation where you got a quarterback that got really comfortable really quickly. That, to me, is a statement on coaching. There's different ways to do it. You can be the type of offensive mastermind that's going to come in and say, learn my system, even if it's a foreign language, I'm going to need you to develop for the next 2 years. Slowick and the Texans did not do that. They went out of the gate. They went to CJ from personnel and from play, from what I've been told, and they sat down and they said, hey, what do you do well and what do you like? And then they integrated those things into the offense from day one. That, to me, speaks to really good coaching. And by the way, that speaks to really good head coaching, too. Coming into this experience where you're like, hey, how do we veer what we do to be the best for our players is what we need to be doing as a staff. That's not a coach winning because of a system. That's coach winning because of flexibility and coaching. So that's part of why I like Slowick a lot, to be a future guy.
Fitz is with us. One thing I do think is that with all these guru coaches that call the plays, I think Joe Burrow will be fine even if Brian Callahan leaves. But Slowick in Houston, Johnson in Detroit, we saw it with Ryan Tannehill here. Arthur Smith leaves, he's not the same. I do think that if you're the Titans and Slowick wants to come here, I think that they have to factor in the idea that it would make C.J. Stroud worse. Do you think that is possible, or do you think that everybody's just convinced that C.J. Stroud is so good that, Jalen Hurts takes a step back, but C.J. Stroud won't?
No, C.J. takes it. I think any quarterback in a new system, especially a young quarterback, is going to take a step back. Like, one of the things that scares me for whoever Chicago drafts, I still think they're going to draft a quarterback first overall. When they do that, they've got Eberflus on a one-year deal. So if that doesn't work, if they don't extend Eberflus, all of a sudden, year two, learning a new system. Like Trevor Lawrence, learning a new system year two. Your Jalen Hurts example is a great one because, frankly, the proof of concept that coordinators matter. Look at Philly, right? So, across the board, I think coordinators matter and position coaches matter a lot more than we want to put into the conversation. So, yeah, would it mean a step back for C.J. Stroud? Even if it just means translating, I think it means a step back. And that's one of the things you have to be aware of, and this is something Titans fans should be aware of. If you hire a defensive-minded coach, which those are several of them that are in the hiring cycle right now, you got to be aware of the fact that if their offense is any good, every year you're going to be replacing your offensive coordinator. And I don't believe all offensive coordinators are built the same. Some are great, some are not. So, yeah, does it result in a step back? Very possibly. Absolutely, it certainly could. And that's a nice little incentive across the board, as long as you believe that Slowick's the right guy to be able to develop your passer. And, again, based on what he's done this year with C.J. Stroud, how could you not trust him either with Will Levis or with a rookie if they choose to go in that route?
So why, Fitz, is Dave Canales, the offensive coordinator at Tampa Bay, not getting more sniffs?
I think Tampa Bay's been slept on in general all year. From a team standpoint, from a coaching standpoint, they've just been overlooked. And that's a very simple answer to a complicated question, is that people are sort of looking at that over on the side and not paying attention. You could see that even in the way their playoff run went down. So could he get more looks? Maybe. But I just think that this right now, people look at Tampa Bay and think of their success as more of an aberration in a bad division than a good team coming out of a good division. Fair or not. And I think it's a really fair comment to sit here and look at Baker. Like, I want to put Baker in the same conversation as Jared Goff. Let's remember that there are teams that give up on quarterbacks, and Baker's somebody that had, eight head coaches, 8 different play callers in his first however many years. Like, it's just an absolute disaster for his development. He's having fun now. He's playing well now. His team's doing a good job of building around him now. Like, Goff and Baker are good examples of you don't always have to have the guy. You have to have a guy you believe in that you can build up and you can build around. And if your coaches are worth a damn and they can do that, you can have a ton of success around them.
Fitz, do you think that the Titans will be in a position, because we've talked about Harbaugh's out there, Belichick's out there. Dan Quinn, I think people think Seattle wants Dan Quinn. I don't know. Vrabel's out there. Do you think the Titans will be in a position where they can hire one of the three gurus, Brian Callahan, Bobby Slowick, or Ben Johnson?
Because of Belichick and Harbaugh, my answer to that is yes. If Harbaugh stays in college football, I think that gets a lot more difficult. And again, it's not right now. When you talk to people around the league, for example, the Washington gig is because of their hire at GM, because of new ownership spending a bunch of money, because of the perception that they're going to give people time to turn around the organization. There seems to be a really strong relationship between new ownership and the new GM with a lot of people behind the scenes. People are talking about the Washington job, for example, like it's coveted. So, that's one job that people seem to really like. Arthur Blank is somebody that is an owner, is willing to be patient, spend a ton of money in a bad division where you can turn around and win some games pretty easily with a lot of stacked players on it. Feels like that job is being coveted. Because of Justin Herbert, some will say the Chargers job is coveted, but again, I'll go back to the Spanos family, particularly cheap. Let's see if they're actually willing to spend the money. These are all jobs that are ranked well above the Titans. I mean, well above the Titans inside league circles. So where it becomes a problem is that if one of those jobs goes to Bill and one of those jobs goes to Harbaugh, yes, then you have the opportunity to get one of your coveted guys. If Harbaugh decides that he's going to stay at Michigan and Bill decides he'd rather just do TV for a year, then everything's off the board and you're going to end up with a candidate you don't like.
How likely is Harbaugh, Fitz? I'm sorry to cut you off. How likely is Harbaugh to stay at Michigan?
People I talk to say 25% chance. I still say I say the opposite. I think there's a really good chance. It's not accidental. They're still negotiating, and they're going to offer him way more money. I mean, I've heard anywhere from 120 to 145 million dollars is already on the table from Michigan, fully guaranteed in a contract. So what NFL team is going to give him anywhere near that? Is he going to leave $50 million on the table to leave Ann Arbor, Michigan with his 87 kids? I don't think so.
But are they going to come down and drop the hammer on that cheating scandal?
But that's why he's trying to get it. According to Dan Wetzel at Yahoo, he's trying to get it put into his contract that even if that happens, there's no recourse to him. And the crazy thing is, man, being at media days last week, the players and the boosters and the fans, they love him because of that. They feel like the NCAA is coming down on him unfairly, and he's a martyr. He's a god. So for the ego in a coach, man, people around him think even higher of him because they think he's being unfairly taken down. It's a wild thing. So his ego's getting fed. His dinner table's getting fed. I think he's staying, but nobody agrees with me. In fairness, nobody agrees with me.
Jason Fitz, as always, Yahoo Sports, Fox Sports Radio. Fitz, appreciate you, even though Ian hung up on you earlier.
Well, I appreciate both of you. Have a great time. Have a great week, brother.
There you go, Fitz, joining us as always. Had to throw you under the bus there a little bit, Ian.
That's okay.
615-737-1025. Coming up next, there is the Titans are interviewing somebody today, and I'll just say this. Thanks, but no thanks. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 through the game.
Dan Quinn will interview with 5 teams this week who are looking for a new head coach. That includes Seattle, where, of course, Dan Quinn coordinated Richard Sherman's defense. Richard, does Dan land one of these jobs?
Yeah, I have a hard time seeing him get out of the building in Seattle. I know they have to interview other guys, but I would assume that is a hand-in-glove fit, a perfect fit for him, a perfect situation, a perfect transition from Pete Carroll to another Seattle great coach. So I think that's the spot.
Yeah, so he'll get hired by somebody this cycle. It most likely, based on even what Richard is saying, is going to probably be Seattle. But Skip, like I said to you before, I can coach Bryce Young. I can coach Sam Howell. I really like this Justin Herbert. Think about what we did with Matt Ryan. He's going to sell himself to get one of these jobs as well.
Have we ever had this many big names on the market, on the coaching carousel with Jim Harbaugh and Belichick and Pete Carroll? And I don't know, all of a sudden, Dan Quinn, is it harder to sell that you were down 27-0 in your playoff game to Green Bay, 48-16 at one point? It's just hard to sell. Might be hard to sell to your fandom.
Right here.
Right?
That was Skip Bayless in the crew today. Titans are interviewing Dan Quinn to be their next head coach. Now, Richard Sherman played for Dan Quinn in Seattle, and he said, I don't think they'll let him out of the building, which is their business, but I can't take Dan Quinn seriously. And I'll tell you why I can't take Dan Quinn seriously. Because I brought this up yesterday about how I don't want to hold one playoff game against any of these candidates. Like, I don't want to say, okay, we saw what the Texans did on Saturday. You have to hire Bobby Slowick because of that. I don't want to say that about Dave Canales. Oh, my God, you have to hire him. I don't want to write off Brian Johnson, but again, it's been a whole season of trending downward for Jalen Hurts. But with Dan Quinn, to me, it's 3 strikes, you're out. Number 1, he blew the 28-3 Super Bowl lead. You can't do that. You can't do that. I'm going to see Thomas Dimitrov at the Super Bowl, and Thomas is, running Sumer Sports, which is an analytic company now. And the reason why Thomas doesn't have a job is because Dan Quinn could not hold a 28-3 lead in the Super Bowl. And I feel bad for Thomas because of that. So that's the first thing. I mean, again, you blow a 28-3 lead in the Super Bowl, that's on the coach. Number 2, Kyle Shanahan left, which, again, this is why the guru matters. Kyle Shanahan's the offensive coordinator. Matt Ryan, league MVP. He leaves. He goes to San Francisco. They couldn't replace him. Matt Ryan went back to being Matt Ryan. Remember Steve Sarkisian as the offensive coach in Atlanta? And he sucked. So no thank you. And then the 3rd strike, last Sunday. Again, I'm not going to just disqualify Dan Quinn because of that one performance, but I am going to disqualify him when I add that up with the other things. Quite frankly, I think Dan Quinn is probably best off as a coordinator. I think he's better off than when he doesn't have to run the whole program himself. Now, I did a podcast last week with Matt Overton, who has long snapped in about 8 different teams, including the Titans in 2020. And he was talking about Dan Quinn. And he was like, this guy absolutely, positively, no doubt, has to be a head coach. Saying that Dan Quinn is the man. And he was snapping for the Cowboys last year. And that's great. But again, I need my head coach. You got a 28-3 lead in the Super Bowl. I need my head coach to be able to manage the game at that point and get me out of it. Like, at that point, that is on the head coach, because an individual play, right, like a dropped punt, that may not be the head coach's fault in that moment. An interception, a fumble, Dante Hightower hits Matt Ryan, he fumbles the ball, Patriots pick it up. That itself may not be the head coach's fault, but the total self-destruction, that is on the head coach. So that's the 1st strike. And again, if you're going to convince me that they're going to hire one of these gurus one of these defensive guys instead of the guru, then you got to tell me, wait a minute. So you are convinced that you can just constantly bring in new good offensive coordinators. Belichick couldn't do it, but you're going to do it. Sirianni couldn't do it, but you're going to do it. Mike Vrabel couldn't do it, but you're going to do it. And you've already not done it. Brought in Sark, and it didn't work. Chris in Murfreesboro says Dan Quinn is the poor man's Mike Vrabel. After this firing, they need to swing for the fence. I can't do Dan Quinn. 3 strikes, you're out. So they're interviewing him today. But again, like I said, I can't take it seriously. Jared versus Joe coming up next. Joe wants to hire the Panthers offensive coordinator as the next coach of the Titans. Jared versus Joe is next. Stillman and Company is presented by Jarrett Companies. Fire and Commercial Plumbing HVAC Division, 615-515-1270, JarrettCompaniesInc.com. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios. It is 5 o'clock on a Wednesday, which means it's time for Jared versus Joe. Caroline is here today. Hello, Caroline.
Hello, how we doing?
Cold. Joe is with us, pumping the Panthers offensive coordinator earlier today, but that's neither here nor there. So it is time for Jared versus Joe.
Jared Stillman versus Joe Rexrode. Now on Stillman and Company.
On ESPN.
102.5 The Game.
Caroline.
All right, Titans are officially on coach search watch. We saw Dan Graziano wrote on ESPN.com, look out for Aaron Glenn.
Hot take.
Should the Titans hire a defensive head coach? Jared, you go first.
Absolutely not. I am out on defensive coach. The only one you may be able to talk me into is a little bit of Pete Carroll, but probably not. I am out on defensive coach. Offense. I want the guru. In fact, I've been thinking a lot about this, and I know Zach Taylor didn't call the plays, and neither did Kevin O'Connell under Sean McVay, and neither did Mike McDaniel under Kyle Shanahan. But I may be leaning more towards Dave Canales at Tampa Bay than Brian Callahan, because Brian Callahan doesn't call the plays. I want the guru coach who calls the plays. Because if you're an offensive coach and you don't call the plays, you lose your offensive coordinator. See ya. Look at what's happening to Philadelphia on offense. So I want an offensive guru, farm out the other side of the ball. Bring in Leslie Frazier, bring in Jim Schwartz, bring in Wade Phillips. I don't care. Bring somebody in, farm that side of the ball out, and give me the offensive guru coach who calls the plays, whether that's Slowick, Johnson, Canales, and again, Callahan doesn't call the plays yet, but he could. Give me the guru. I am not interested in Dan Quinn. I am not interested in Mike McDonald. I am not interested in Aaron Glenn or any of these other defensive coaches. No, thank you.
Yeah, well, when it comes to play calling, I mean, Mike McDaniel also didn't until he went to Miami, right?
Correct.
That's
why I brought him up.
I think, right. I'm just saying, I'm not even like that worried about that with Callahan. Yeah, I think it's fine to cast a wide net. I think it's fine to have an open mind. But to me, it's like if you end up going with a defensive coach, and part of the reasoning is, it's just such a great leader, rallies the locker room and all that stuff. And it's like, well, you just had Mike Vrabel. I don't think that you always have to hire, when you fire a coach, hire the opposite of that coach. You see it happen a lot. I don't think that should be a rule. But when's the last time the Titans had sort of a on the cutting edge offensive coach as a head coach? Mike Mularkey had previously been a great offensive coordinator, years before with the Steelers. I guess Ken Wisenhunt, people thought he was a genius or something.
Well, Wisenhunt would count, but here's what I would say. On paper, Wisenhunt made sense. He had been to the Super Bowl as the head coach in Arizona. He called the plays, had success with Phillip Rivers, and on paper, Wisenhunt looked like a solid hire. The problem was, supposedly, Mark Howard told me this, Tommy Smith hired him without even meeting him. There is an interview process to weed out the bozos. But on paper, Wisenhunt looked like the guru. That's not a reason for me not to hire a Bobby Slowick or a Ben Johnson.
No, but my point being that I think it'd be nice to see the Titans get one of these young guys who's part of what is obviously an incredibly successful tree that just keeps regenerating and working every time. I think sometimes it's too obvious right in your face. Go ahead and do that. You've got actually multiple options in that regard. So, and by the way, you want to rip me on Thomas Brown, and that's fine. I don't know if you actually listened to what I said, but I think, when he was mentioned as someone they were talking to, the instant reaction is oh, my God, the Panthers? 13 points a game? But if you really look at that horrible situation, it wasn't even his offense. And look at how valued he was by McVay. You, Jared, have talked up how much Shanahan loves Slowick. Well, it's the same thing with Brown and McVay. And so I think that to dismiss him out of hand would be a mistake. The NFLPA stuff I take as good information. He was voted number 2. The one thing about this whole search I don't understand is why the Titans, of all these people, would not have the guy who came in number 1 on that survey, who is Frank Smith from the Dolphins.
So why would, again, going back to well, we'll get into Thomas Brown or whatever that Panthers take you had today was horrendous. But
okay,
I go back to the calling the plays, right? When it comes to the offensive guru coach, like Mike Mularkey was actually a really good play caller when he was with the Steelers. But that where we were 6 years ago when they hired Mike Vrabel, or even, 8 years ago when they hired Mike Mularkey, I mean, the game has changed. Like, Matt LaFleur is a dope. He kicked a field
just a
goal.
total dope. That guy doesn't have a clue.
He kicked a field goal down by 8 points in the NFC Championship game.
Just a dope. That guy can't tie his
He
own
can't
shoes,
count.
Jared.
He can't count. Wow, it's the fourth quarter of the NFC Championship game.
You are so smart,
and I'm
Jared.
down
Tell
by
us how dumb
8.
Matt LaFleur is.
Let me kick a field goal here down by 8, so I'll be down by 5 instead. Guy's a dope, but he is a guru that knows how to develop the quarterback, and that's where the game's going. LaFleur has nothing to do with the offense. He has, nothing to do with the defense, nothing to do with the special teams, and he can't count. Other than that, he is where the game is going. And so in the past, these leader of men coaches, that was something that mattered. It doesn't matter anymore. I watched 3 grown men sit on Taylor Lewan's bus and cry over Mike Vrabel yesterday. I don't need the leader of men coach. I need the guru coach, because that's where the game is today. That's how you develop a young quarterback, which the Titans have. And yes, LaFleur's a dope. Even though he's developed the quarterback, you cannot convince me that if you kick a field goal down by 8 points, you are not a dope.
See, what I would argue is if you can have some of both. Well, first of all, it's a dumb take by you and LaFleur. I mean, this is a rabbit hole we shouldn't go down. Coaches do this all the time. If you don't think you're going to convert and you're down 8 and you don't think you're going to convert, you're trying to get the ball back, then take points. And then if you score a touchdown, you win, Jared. In fact, if you score 6 points with a touchdown, then you win without even an extra point. I mean, you're
Tom Brady and see if we can get it back. Smart.
Okay. All right. But that's not, it didn't work out for him. So he's a dope who can't count per you. But as far as the leader of men versus the offensive, guru, I would agree. I would prefer the offensive guru. But I put stock into someone who people like to play for and work with. And that's why, for example, Frank Smith, he's with Mike McDaniel. He came in number 1 in that NFLPA survey. I put some stock into that. I mean, to
it
me,
is
why
wild
not
to me
have
that
both?
the Titans haven't even nibbled on Frank Smith, right?
I don't understand that.
Like, if we're going to cast a wide net and we're going to interview the Panthers offensive coordinator, we might as well interview the guy that, again, checks a lot of the boxes that it feels like a lot of people are looking for when it comes to a head coach. Caroline, what's next?
Well, if we're going to bring up the Thomas Brown debacle, let's go ahead and get into that. Joe, I would like you to present your take that you had this morning. I would like Jared to know what he's got his britches all in a wad over. And then, Joe, you can support your take. Please, you have the floor.
Yeah, so because Jared just talked about all the boxes that Frank Smith checks. Well, one of them is, again, one that Thomas Brown checks. He came in number 2 on that survey. Also, he's a McVay offense guy. He did not turn down Frank Reich. David Tepper had this stupid idea. Let's just take all these guys who don't know each other, but they're really good and they're smart, and we'll put them together, and we'll make just this amazing crew for Bryce Young to lean on. It'll be awesome. Well, Thomas Brown is the OC, not calling plays, but also it's not that offense. It's Frank Reich's offense. And then they switch, and they have Thomas Brown call plays, and Reich gets fired. It's all a mess. But it wasn't his stuff. It wasn't that offense. There was some, apparently, of it, like trying to infuse some of it. I mean, we had a really good story at The Athletic, with Joe Person and Diana Rossini about their whole debacle there. And, I mean, you had no chance. You had no chance with the person. No one had any chance on that offensive group, right? But go before that. Thomas Brown at age 27 is Miami Hurricanes OC. They scored 30 points plus 3 years in a row while he's there. He goes to the Rams. He's assistant or associate, whatever, head coach, second year there, running backs, then to tight ends. Sean McVay, look, I take a Sean McVay endorsement seriously. I take the Kyle Shanahan endorsement seriously. I am absolutely willing to take this last year with just a garbage situation, not his own offense. I mean, I guess you could criticize him for taking the job because we're having a conversation now, and I'm sure Jared will sit there and poop out, I mean, he's 13 points a game. He's not. I mean, that's the problem. You take a job like that, and you have people who don't want to actually look at deep information, puke stuff like that out on you, and so you hurt yourself by taking the job. So I'd give him a little bit of criticism for taking the job. Hindsight's 20/20, but everything about his trajectory is very impressive. And again, the NFLPA thing, I take that seriously. Callahan's on there too. Frank Smith's on there.
Who cares who the players like? Who cares?
Because no, you're stupid. You're stupid.
Hey, Taylor Lewan and Derrick Henry, boo-hoo, Vrabel, they fired him. Oh, God.
Jared, it's not. The question isn't who you like. It's who you think is competent. You don't think that players?
I don't care what the players think. The players don't know anything.
Oh, yeah, I don't care what the players think.
I don't.
You should totally be in charge of a team.
I had Chris Sanders earlier today.
This is fantastic analysis by you today.
I had Chris Sanders earlier today try to tell me that Derrick Henry's going to have a huge market in free agency. I love Chris with all my heart. I do not
don't be
care.
throwing pot shots at Chris Sanders.
I'm just saying, I do not care what the players think.
What does that have to do with this? The point is, these surveys are detailed surveys about coaches and their competence. Is he your buddy? Do you like him? No, Jared, that's not what it is. This is trying to get a detailed look at what players think about coaches. And, yes, that absolutely matters.
It's like Pro Bowl voting.
Are you kidding me? No, it's not like Pro Bowl voting. God. I mean, you're just full of good taste today.
So here's my thing on Thomas Brown. Here's my thing on Thomas Brown is I believe that we have to have some standards around here. And every excuse that you gave me, which came from your league source.
I gave no excuses. I gave you what happened.
Who you got from your league source, who you admitted this morning might be biased.
Sure.
I mean, that's great.
There's a lot that I was told that I'm like, okay, well, that's your opinion, man, and that's fine. We'll see. But what I gave you was facts.
That might be great. All of that might be the case. But I cannot take the offensive coordinator who is in charge of the 32nd ranked offense in the NFL.
God, you're so stupid.
Whose entire group just set that quarterback up for failure. And it might not be his fault. It might not be his fault that they're no good.
That's exactly what you said.
But Bobby Slowick does get credit for them being good. That's how this works. If your team is good, you get credit for it. If your team is bad, you get the blame. Secondly, if Sean McVay loved this guy so much, why did he not make him offensive coordinator when Kevin O'Connell went to go be the head coach of the Vikings?
I don't know, Jared. There's a lot of contenders for these jobs. He moved up quickly. He got to the Rams in like 21.
Right. In 2020, he got to the Rams. He was a running backs coach. Then he was the assistant head coach and running backs coach, kind of like Terrell Williams right now. Then he was the tight ends coach. They could have made him offensive coordinator when Kevin O'Connell went to the Vikings. Instead, they made Liam Cohen the offensive coordinator. And then after that, instead of Sean McVay saying, hey,
Liam
I'm going to make
you my highly successful year.
Right. But instead of then when Liam Cohen went to Kentucky.
Coordinator.
Right. But instead of him saying, hey, after Liam Cohen went back to Kentucky, instead of giving the offensive coordinator job to Thomas Brown, he gave it to somebody else. So he is not willing to give this guy his number 2 slot, but you want to give him the number 1 slot.
First of all, Jared, my number 1 candidate is Bobby Slowick. I'm
Don't be
telling
stealing my
everybody
number one
today-
candidate, Joe.
That's my number one candidate. So don't
Oh,
see
boy.
what you're doing.
No, he's
you're
my
already-
number one candidate.
Is he really?
So
Either
Brown?
Bobby Slowick or Brian Callahan.
I'm surprised Joe's isn't Ben Johnson.
That's
I'm
that
a little bit-
anti-Detroit agenda.
I'm a little bit sketchy on. He just doesn't. I don't know. His interactions on the sideline. I don't know. He's very creative. Plus, I think it's important for Levis, if they can make it work, to have the exact same offense that he can just go right back to. I mean, it's not top of the list, but I don't think Ben Johnson is so much better than some of these other guys that that it doesn't matter. I
The
think it
players
does
didn't
matter
vote
some.
him high. That is true.
That's right.
The
He's
players
not on
did
that
not
list.
vote him on the list, on the PA list.
The point being, when Thomas Brown was mentioned, people were like, "Oh my God, the Panthers."
They
And it's
should
just,
be like that.
there's
We
just-
should have standards around
that's
here.
Exactly that's exactly what I would expect you to do, rather than actually look into something.
I'm
tried to
surprised.
help you, but you refuse.
I'm surprised. Is Vanderbilt's offensive coordinator not available? I mean, why not make him the head coach?
Good one.
More Jared versus Joe continues next.
Jared Stillman versus Joe Rexrode. Now on Stillman and Company.
On ESPN
102.5 The Game.
More Jared versus Joe continuing. Caroline Fenton.
Joe Rexrode, you go first. We heard Derrick Henry on Bussing with the Boys today. He talked about his future. He wants to go to a playoff contender. Doesn't know if the door is open to come back to the Titans. Should the Titans bring back Derrick Henry, and at what cost? Joe, you have the floor.
Well, I mean, I'd like to see Derrick Henry back with the Tennessee Titans. I think I have no idea who their coach is going to be. So, I mean, that you start there, and what does he believe in? I mean, there are
What's his vision is a good question. We'd all like to know.
There you go.
Did you guys see John Schneider did his press conference the other day, and he had a vision for what they were looking for in a coach? Apparently it wasn't top secret there.
Interesting. I did not see that. So I think that it would be good for Derrick Henry to be here for the fans. I still think it's possible it comes back around to that, but certainly the firing of Vrabel makes it less likely in my mind. And, listening to him on that show, I think he's kind of resolved to the fact that he's probably moving on. But, look, I think that just like even if they didn't fire Vrabel, you're going to have to see what he gets out there on the market. If there's a team that he believes, I do think that, and he said it, I do think that he is prioritizing winning. Certainly if there's one team that offers way more than anybody else, you could probably rationalize it, and maybe that'll be the choice. But I also think that there's a chance he doesn't find much at all out there to his liking. It's way below what he was hoping, and that maybe it comes back around to this conversation. Rand Carthon didn't say a lot at that presser last week. He did mention that they at least had the conversation to try to keep relationships up, and who knows what may happen down the road. So, I mean, I can't really answer the question. I think for the sake of the fan base, because I don't even know who's coaching the football team. There are some coaches who do not want one of their two running backs to not be able to go out and run choice routes and, be actually an active part of the passing game. And if that's what you believe as a coach, then I can't knock that coach for not wanting to sign Derrick Henry. In general, yeah, I think Derrick Henry has a lot of value. He was second in the league in rushing, led the AFC behind a garbage offensive line that he took to Vegas and bought him dinner. So I mean,
wore
that's
sex pants.
Yeah, with the sex pants.
Where do you find sex pants like that?
It's a pretty stand-up dude. I'm sure.
I don't know. I
Derrick
don't have
Henry,
them.
He ironed on the patches himself.
I look that way on his sex pants. Here's what I'd say about Derrick Henry. I am in total agreement with Joe from the standpoint that, I mean, it's hard for me to say, like, oh, they need to do this when I don't know who the coach is, right? Like, if they're going to run the wing tee, then I feel a little different than I would if, say they're going to try to run, something more modern. But I do think, with Derrick Henry, I think, listening to him on Bussing with the Boys, I think he thinks there's like some utopian society out there for him where there is going to be a nice mix of team is good and team is going to pay me money. And I'm not sure that team exists in the NFL. I think there's a good chance Derrick Henry gets humbled when he goes out looking for a job in March from the money standpoint. So I do think that what Derrick Henry really brings to Titans, I still think Derrick Henry's a good player, and I think all these offenses running the ball is still very important to Kyle Shanahan. And remember when they had Tevin Coleman and was it Devontae Freeman was the other running back?
Yes, with the Falcons, yes.
Yeah, I mean, there was kind of a thunder and lightning element to those two who were very, very good. And I could see, again, somebody wanting to do that with Spears and Henry together, more carries for Spears, less carries for Henry. I do think this, though. I don't think there will be any team that values Derrick Henry more than this team, because this team is so devoid of leadership on the offensive side of the football. And I don't know how important that's going to be to Bobby Slowick or Brian Johnson or Ben Johnson or Brian Callahan or whomever, but I think it's important. And I think that, for a young quarterback, it would be very nice and advantageous to continue to have the steady hand of leadership behind him. That being said, I don't think the Titans are going to be Super Bowl contenders next year. I don't know that because nobody thought the Texans would be in the divisional round of the playoffs this year, and they are. Nobody thought Jacksonville would be there last year. So maybe the Titans could get good, but if Derrick Henry really wants to play for a contender, then if he re-signs with the Titans, then I think there's going to be kind of this sense of, like, I mean, didn't you say you wanted to be somewhere else to win a Super Bowl? And that's going to be like a constant discussion as the trade deadline comes up and everything else. Maybe, you know, firing Vrabel and Tannehill moving on, maybe it's just best to close the book on the entire era of Titan football that I think will be remembered as the Ryan Tannehill, Derrick Henry era of Titan football, the same way it's remembered as the Steve McNair, Eddie George era. But I just don't think there's going to be a market for Derrick Henry. I really don't. And he talked on Bussin' with the Boys about how close it was to him being traded and how it didn't work out. And I wonder if the reason why the trade ultimately didn't work out was because the other team wasn't offering enough, right? A couple years ago, Von Miller, and this is the only way Derrick Henry could know this, because he said that he went to his agents after Kevin Byard got traded, and he was like, hey, what's going on? And he said it was close. The only way the Titans would tell Derrick Henry's agents that is if they needed Derrick Henry to adjust his contract in order to make a deal happen, right? So we're going to bonus you the money here, and then they're going to pay you minimum salary there. But Von Miller did that a couple years ago with the Broncos. He went to the Rams. Well, that was for a second and a third round pick. I like Derrick Henry. But if the Titans had got offered a second and a third round pick for Derrick Henry, they would have made that trade. So whatever the hang-up is, this AFC contender either didn't want to pay the price in picks or didn't want to pay the price in money or both. And so when he hits free agency, I think there's going to be a lot of teams that'll say, hey, we'd like it $3 million with the ability to get you to $5 million. We'd like it $4 million, but I don't think there's going to be anybody out there that says we'd like you at 10. And I could see the Titans saying, hey, we want Derrick, we'll give you 8. Something like that.
8? Good Lord. They are not giving him $8 million.
Why not? They got how much cap space? They got all that cap space, Joe.
Oh, yeah. They do have a lot of cap space. It's fake. Doesn't matter.
It doesn't.
You don't need to pay him $8 million. He's going to get, I mean, maybe someone will give him a 2 for 12. It's not. He's not getting $8 million a year, man.
I don't think anybody's giving him 2 for 12.
Well, you just said okay, all right. You just said 8.
No, I'm not talking about the Titans. I'm talking about everybody else.
Right, but you think the Titans should give him $8 million?
I think that he has more value to the Titans than he does any other team in the NFL.
Well, as far as the leadership thing, he is valuable in that way, but that void needs to be filled by Will Levis. I mean, that's a huge part of everything moving forward is not only that he becomes a good quarterback, but that he becomes a leader, and I think it is trending that way. I think that he'll be up to that, but it's not a bad thing to have a Derrick Henry back. It's not a bad thing to have a DeAndre Hopkins back either.
Caroline?
D-Mays told me today that Chris Moore can be that leader.
Oh, great. He's not even under contract next year either.
I said, D-Mays, ain't nobody walking into Nissan Stadium with Chris Moore jerseys on?
Nobody's like, you know what? Chris Moore did this, so I want to be like Chris Moore. I'm going to follow his lead.
All right, next question. Jared, I will ask you, where was the Titans vacancy rank among the vacancies in the NFL?
So it's a hard question to answer because we don't know about Dallas and Philadelphia yet.
So far.
Let's go ahead and say that those aren't out there yet. And I don't know, man, about Philadelphia. I don't know what you do there. I don't know. So if we take them out and we take the Steelers out, I would go Chargers 1, Seahawks 2, Titans 3, because I like Will Levis. You know, I don't love him, but I like him. I don't know that other coaches will feel that way, or maybe they'll love him. I don't know. But I have the Titans at 3, Raiders with Aiden O'Connell at 4, Falcons no quarterback at 5, Commanders, I know Dan Snyder doesn't own the team anymore, but, you know, I think that's a crap show. And then Panthers, I mean, I'd rather coach college football than coach the Panthers.
So my big quibble with your rankings is I'm putting the Commanders way higher on the list. The Commanders have the second pick. They're going to get Drake May. And obviously this is beauty in the eye of the beholder. But I think a lot of people out there in the NFL are going to tell you that Caleb Williams and Drake May, they like better than probably everybody but Stroud of this class, and that they're among the best couple of prospects that they've had in a while. I mean, I know some people talk about Caleb Williams generational player, and then there's some, whatever. Some people don't like some of the stuff he's done. Drake May is a special prospect. The owner seems to have
I feel like every year we get a generational quarterback.
Well, yeah, like Zach Wilson. Remember, like Zach Wilson was supposed to be like that freaking dude too.
But Zach Wilson got all this momentum during the draft process. Drake May and Caleb Williams, this is a long time conversation. I don't think that they're the exact same. You're right. Every year, other than the year that it was a bad QB class when Pickett was the only one who went in the first round, people get pumped up. But these two guys, I absolutely put, at least in terms of what league people think, in a different category. So you have him. You have really good receiving talent. You've got, and again, I think an owner who seems to actually have a clue, and that's obviously been the main thing holding them back. So
I get nervous about new owners, though, because new owners like Tepper, like they try to, they want to, put their stamp on it. Kind of like the Broncos. They just throw money at everything. Like, oh, yeah, they just throw money at everything. And it's like sometimes it's a little too much. You know what I mean?
I think a lot of people would rank the Titans lower. I would also put them up there at like 4 because I think Levis has a chance to be really good. That's what the ranking is, really, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just what you think of Levis as a coaching prospect.
Oh, if you don't like Levis,
believe in him, then
if you don't like Levis, the Titans are way down there because like Atlanta will get another quarterback, and you would assume that if it's kind of like a Baker this year, where it's like kind of a reclamation project of a guy who's been good. If you hate Levis, you'd probably rather that kind of player than Levis. But I like Levis, so I would rank him higher. Caroline, who wins this week?
So you get docked major points for dissing on our friend Chris Sanders there. That will not fly. Not in this debate. Not in this program. He is a sacred cow, even if he does say some crazy stuff.
Crazy stuff.
But Jared wins this week. Because here is my thing with Thomas Brown. Look, I will be willing to give him the BOD, the benefit of the doubt, for the Panthers offense this past year because they had 0 offensive line. Their best pass-catching weapon was Adam Thielen, even though I know Joe has a love affair with Adam Thielen. And also, I do think that Frank Reich had a lot more to do with that offense. He was calling plays probably for a good portion of the season. So I'll give him the benefit of the doubt there. For me, it's just experience. You've been, assistant head coach with the Rams, but Sean McVay runs that entire program. They had a lot of success there, yeah, but he's only had 1 year as an offensive play caller. I think that he needs a few more years, just a little bit more experience. Show me a little bit more on your resume before I can make you the head coach, who might have final say. We don't know.
Yeah, my point was just to say he's not the total garbage candidate that some people say. But
I think that at this point, like on paper, I've never met the guy. I don't know but on paper, I think he is a garbage candidate.
Yeah, well, right. So you're wrong, but you win. So congrats.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Jared versus Joe. It's everybody's favorite every single week. 615-737.
For Jerry Stackhouse tonight against Auburn. Sorry.
I was surprised, by the way, you didn't cut in there on Joe when Joe was talking about Caleb Williams and Drake May and just left Jaden Daniels out of it.
I will live if you don't talk about my college quarterback. I'm going to be
just
okay.
saying. I was just a little surprised by that. By the way, I would rather have the number 2 pick in this draft than the number 1 pick because I don't like Caleb Williams at all.
Well, you don't have to take Caleb Williams first if you don't want to.
No, but you have to.
You don't have to do anything.
That you have to. It's like the scouts are going to rank him better than the other guys, and you can't get in front of the podium and say, yeah, we had this guy ranked higher on our board, but I just can't deal with all his bull crap, so you got to take him.
I don't think you have to do anything. I think he's kind of a crybaby.
I think it's like, again, not that Zach Wilson was a better prospect than Trevor Lawrence, but it's that kind of player. It's like you can't turn down that kind of player. And I want to turn down
that kind of player.
What's that?
Not if you don't think that he's that kind of player.
I mean, I don't, but the world does. So, man, they think he's the next Patrick Mahomes. I don't know.
That's what everyone thought about Bryce Young, too.
Yeah.
All right.
615-737-1025. Coming up next, Derrick Henry said something kind of revealing about the Kevin Byard trade. I want to get to that coming up next, and we will. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company is presented by Jarrett Companies. That's right. Everybody likes Jarrett Companies. Jarrett Companies, if I can get this thing to pull up on my email. Here you go. Stillman and Company, brought to you by Jarrett Companies, Fire, Commercial, Plumbing, HVAC Division, 615-515-1270, JarrettCompaniesInc.com.
Is that surprising to you? Brave getting fired?
Yeah, I'm definitely surprised. Because the body of work that Braves has had since he's been there. These last 2 years have been tough, but I feel like Braves is a great coach. He has a championship mentality. He's a leader of men, and he knows to get the best out of his players. I know it's different in the front office with the personnel that they have, and maybe they have a different vision. I'm not sure. I don't know all the details, but I thought he'll still be the coach. I thought they'll probably just talk it out and, make some adjustments as time went forward and, for the future of the organization. But it was shocking to me.
Derrick Henry sitting there on the bus saying, yeah, they had their problems, the front office and the coach, but I figured they'd work it out. I figured they'd go to counseling. I figured they'd get it fixed. And so that's an example on Bussing with the Boys and the Kevin Byard trade, which we'll get to in a second. Those are examples of times this year that watching this last night of Derrick Henry on Bussing with the Boys, that I saw that and I was like, yes, I knew it. I knew it. And the instance there is clearly the disconnect between Vrabel and the front office. Remember all the time, oh, no, they collaborate great. They get along great. Everything's fine. There's no problems here. It's going to be great. Don't worry about it this. Don't worry. Uh-huh. Sure. Diana Rossini on Thanksgiving. He's not going anywhere. Sure. And I told you on the Black Friday show after the Diana report, I said, they already lied to us about Mike Mularkey. Don't worry about it here. They probably lied to us. So all throughout the year, there were all these things about like, is that going to be? No. And then it was as suspected. Yes, we were right. The duck theory. If it looks like a duck, it quacks like a duck. Chances are it's a duck. The reason why I was so against the Kevin Byard trade was because at 2-4, I was not ready to give up on the season. I thought there was a chance that this team could salvage their season. And I really think had they gone on the road and beaten Pittsburgh, which they were right there, I really think that there is a chance that this could have ended differently. And yet, when they traded Byard, I felt like that was waving the white flag saying, okay, that's the season. And I guaranteed, because I was in the facility that week at the press conferences and everything, and I was like, the vibe is bad. And I guaranteed they lose to the Falcons. Now, I didn't know that Desmond Ridder would play that first half the way he did, and they ended up winning the game. But this was Derrick Henry on Bussing with the Boys talking about really, again, everybody said when I like, they're giving up on the season. We're not giving up. The coach said we're not giving up. This is just a move. We got it. But no. This is what Derrick Henry said, though.
I ain't gonna lie, I was hurt a little bit, like you said, because I came in with KB, and we were probably like the vets in the group who've been, they're the longest between all the everybody that was there. And when they traded him, I was just like, dang. I mean, they trade KB. I might be out of here too, because when you think of a Titan, I feel like KB represents all of that and more. So that's when I knew it was getting real. And what I was wondering, what I felt when I first came back was it was definitely happening.
It was definitely happening. We were definitely waving the white flag. That's what he's talking about. Even though at the time, everybody, oh, no, this is just a business. It's one move. It doesn't, And that's why, again, if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck on this program, it's a duck. And that's why I don't, the Titans say whatever they want to say, and every time I'm like, okay. And then that takes me to kind of a bigger thing I was thinking about last night watching this. We get mad at young people for lying. Like, we talk about how bad it is to lie. Ian, you've got 2 kids. I'm sure you tell them all the time not to lie.
Mm-hmm.
And you get in trouble in school if you lie. And then yet, once you become an adult, 75% of everything is a lie. It's like half the day is just deciphering what's the truth and what's not. And half the things people lie about, they don't even need to lie about, right? It's like, are you rebuilding as a team? Yes or no? It's okay. Just say yes. But they can't do it. And it's not just football. It's everything in life where I feel like half the time I have a conversation with someone and I'm thinking to myself, is this person telling the truth? And more often than not, I kind of feel like the answer is no. And so, again, that's, I just, okay. Titan said it. Okay. 615-737-1025 here on Stillman and Company. 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in. White Bison, that is your local coffee shop, and it is freaking cold outside, so go to White Bison and stay warm and cozy with their new honey-based drinks. The Cinnamon Beehive Latte, the Iced Vanilla Nut Macchiato, the Vanilla Rooibos Tea Latte. White Bison is your local coffee shop with food featuring fresh-made premium breakfast, lunch, and snack options. Download the app and order ahead. When you download the Twice Daily and White Bison app, you can enroll in the rewards program, and you can place orders on the go anytime and automatically earn on every purchase. Download the app to order ahead, earn rewards, and get one free coffee every time you buy 7. That's part of White Bison's rewards. Buy 7, get one free. White Bison Twice Daily, fresh all day.
What's your favorite moment as a Titan?
My favorite moment as a Titan? That run we had. You seen finish that motherfucker.
Individual play I'm talking about. Is it 99?
Yeah, that's probably not, because that's how it all, that's when it all started.
We called it too. I say it every time, like, as if I'm like taking credit for the play call.
Yeah.
I called that.
That was Bussin' with the Boys, Taylor Lewan, Will Compton, and Derrick Henry. And let me say this. I'm not somebody who listens to Bussin' with the Boys on a consistent basis. I mean, it's just like the bro stuff. That's not really for me. Like, that's not what I'm interested in. But every time they have on Mike Vrabel or Derrick Henry, I have to listen to it because you never know what's going to be said, and then we discuss and everything else. And so last night, the Derrick Henry Bussin' with the Boys came on, and I watched it, and I listened to what Henry had to say about, where he wanted to go next, which was important. And then towards the end there, they really went down memory lane. And I'm not telling you to listen to the podcast. I'm not telling you not to listen to it. But if you're a Titan fan, I mean, the trip down memory lane, that was something. And when it comes to consuming media and things like that, the truth is people always want to know what's next. People don't care about rear view mirror stuff. Like, they want to know what's next. But when I was listening to them talk about the 2019 run the Titans had, or the 2021 season, or things like that, I mean, it really got me in my feels knowing that this era of Titans football is essentially over. Derrick Henry might come back, and Harold Landry is still on the team. But for the most part, the core group, it's over. And where it really got me was them talking about that whole 2019 run. And Lawan and Henry about all their experiences. Oh, this was incredible. This was great. This was. And what I found just to be hilarious is, there they are playing these games. There they are going on this run. And they talked about the Dennis Kelly touchdown pass in the AFC Championship game. It put them up 17-7. And they were talking kind of like from their vantage point of what that meant and how they felt and everything else. And it took me back to Arrowhead Stadium, where we were up in the press box, which is up in the clouds. Like, you're up there high-fiving God. You're so high at Arrowhead Stadium. And so many people were credentialed that they didn't have a seat for everybody, so they had seats for us in the back so we could watch the game on TV, but we didn't want to do that. So we just found seats, in the press box. Floyd sat in one, Chase sat in one, and I didn't have a seat. I was like, over, like, hanging on Corey Curtis's shoulder, like, the entire game, like, right over his shoulder, standing up, watching the game, and reacting in live time. And I remember when they threw that touchdown pass. And, I mean, that was the first moment that they threw that touchdown pass, completed it. They're up 17-7. I'm like, oh, my God, the Titans are going to the Super Bowl. Like, the Titans are going to the freaking Super Bowl. And I looked right at Floyd, who was sitting a couple chairs down after they threw it, and he just goes, listen to the silence. And he points at the stadium, which had been rocking the whole time. And as they talked about that 2019 run, it took me back to the Jared and the GM show and what that was like on that 2019 run. Me, Chase, and Floyd flying into St. Louis and driving in the middle of the night to Kansas City because it snowed in Kansas City, so we couldn't fly in there. Or how Ryan Porth rented us this house that we were staying at. Floyd, didn't really know how to use the TV and, all that kind of stuff. Or how Floyd didn't let us go to Hibachi and instead made us go to Olive Garden because he didn't trust it. And it's like, it was crazy to hear them talk about their memories like that, and then kind of how it was on par with how I remembered that. And I bet a lot of fans probably feel the same way. It was just really cool. I'm not a big memory lane guy, but obviously, those times with the GM and those stories and everything else, it definitely took me back there last night, and I was glad that it did. That's it for us. We're out of here. ESPN Radio's next. Vandy basketball against Auburn at home, 7:30. Stillman and Company. We'll see you tomorrow, too.